How are we all doing? I can't wait to play this, guys. This is Mycorrhiza. I'm very honored to have Alfred Pros and Tim, aka Fulministicus, in chat. I think I mentioned that wrong, but I'm very honored to have them in chat here. Right, guys, let's play this. I'm so excited to play this. This is Mycorrhiza. It's a visual novel, manga, horror. It's going to be great. Before you get into the game, there are a few things you might want to know. Oh, okay. Or not. It's your choice. Oh, love the choice. Love the choice. Well, of course, we're going to read the short tutorial. If you've already played visual novels, then you might be familiar with these shortcuts. But just in case you aren't, Control or right trigger, you can skip already read text. With Tab, you can toggle skipping. You can also press the fast forward button on the bottom right of this text box. By pressing the play button on the right of the text, you can toggle autoplay. This advances the text automatically. After pressing it, it will turn into a pause button, which you can stop autoplay. You can set the autoplay time. The time will wait before advancing the text in the settings. With H or the middle mouse button, you can hide the UI. I didn't know that. Okay, that's useful to know. If you'd like to see the CGs in all their glory, you can also press the Y button on your gamepad. Pressing the X button on the top right hand side of the text box does the same. Okay. Pressing Escape, Start, or the right mouse button opens the game menu. Alternatively, you can press the quick menu button in the top left folded page corner. You can view the text history by using the mouse wheel, left bumper, or the page up button. Self-voices. V toggles assistive self-voicing. Oh, that's really clever. Well done, guys. That's amazing. Very accessible. You can also turn on other accessibility options like dyslexic font and audio cues in the settings. That's excellent. There's also an option to change the game's brightness in the settings. Note that hiding the UI temporarily ignores your brightness setting until the UI is shown again. One thing that you should be noted is that you can play through the upcoming doors in any order. I didn't know that. Okay. Oh, you give me a dilemma now. You don't need to play them left to right. Some audio events in this game also makes use of stereo effects. Thus, it is best to enjoy the game with headphones. Okay, sorry. The rest should be pretty self-explanatory. Don't disappoint her. Oh, damn. Okay. So we've got load, about settings, about controls, and quit. Let's click on about. Thank you for checking out Mycorrhiza. We really appreciate support. So it's just like okay, loading the game. Gotcha. Okay, cool. One way to find out. Oh no. Okay. Let's open the door. Welcome to a world of distorted minds. My eyes were burning. It felt like hot coals were lying on my eyelids. I slowly opened them and attempted to heave myself up from the cold asphalt. But I failed. My whole body was heavy and my head felt like it was being squashed by a hydraulic press. After a few attempts, I finally succeeded and tried to make out where I was. The fog in my mind lifted slowly and I realized I was in a dark alleyway. My vision was still blurry and I had trouble keeping my eyes open. But I could tell if I'd never seen this place before. Slowly my heart began to race. Was I abducted? Mugged? What happened to me? I hastily checked my body, fortunately finding no wounds. Why was I feeling this weak then? Maybe I was drugged. As I tried to recall what might have happened to me, my eyes finally focused. I could see a house in front of me. It was the only house on the street with its lights on. The dirty yellow glow shone through almost every single visible window. I felt some relief knowing that the tenants were awake. Perhaps they could tell me where I was. I approached the front door. It took me some searching to find a doorbell through the overgrown ivy. A deep gong rang out from within the house when I pressed it. The sound, amplified by the cold wind cutting through my shirt, made me tense up. What an odd choice for a doorbell sound, I thought while rubbing my upper arms to warm myself. I waited. No one answered. My mind twisted in confusion. Why was no one coming? I rang the doorbell again. Then I tried knocking. No response. No one was coming. I didn't understand. Did they forget to turn off the lights and go on vacation? As a last resort, I tried turning the doorknob and it actually opened. This worried me. Did something happen to the family living here? Perhaps I should find a phone and call the police. Suddenly, a loud crash echoed through the street. My heart started to pound as my body tensed up. I wanted to dash into the house, but my feet refused to move. What was that sound? Was someone out here? Pictures of otherworldly monsters and armed kidnappers popped into my mind as my eyes scanned the darkness. The world was silent once more. I was still on edge, but my body slowly started to relax as I regained my composure. I decided I didn't want to find out what that was. Cautiously, I stepped through the threshold and firmly closed the door behind me. I entered a dimly lit hallway. The contours of the minimalist furniture were illuminated by the streetlights outside. I felt an immediate lurch of guilt as I was passing into a stranger's home. Hello, is anyone here? No answer. The house was eerily quiet. I cautiously ventured further down the front hall and stopped in front of one of the doors. A dim yellow light seeped silently through the bottom crack. I turned the knob. Locked. Then the next one. Also locked. They all seemed to be. I frowned. Why were the lights behind these locked doors lit? It gave me an uneasy feeling. The door at the very end of the hall was the only one that I hadn't tried yet. I grasped its handle and turned it slowly. It swung open to complete darkness. Once again, my body tensed up whilst my mind started to conjure horrific images. A beast with dislocated limbs and crooked teeth creeping towards me from the darkness. A floor littered with corpses and walls stained with blood. A giant spider sitting in a corner, waiting for its chance to strike. My hands shook as I reached to flick on the light. It was an utterly ordinary bedroom. My heartbeat slowly calmed down as I realized that I seemed to be safe. It felt almost silly getting scared of nothing. A quick search yielded but nothing but barren, just dusty shelves. The bed was the only meaningful object present. Slowly but surely, a wave of fatigue washed over me. With my adrenaline rush fading away, I found that I was more exhausted than I had realized. Like a worm wiggling its way into an apple, a single thought slowly invaded my mind. I had to sleep. Trying to fight it made it worse, as if some outside power was affecting me. Sleeping in a stranger's bed in a stranger's home was the last thing I wanted to do right now. But it was soon the only thing I could think about as my consciousness faded. I had to sleep. The world turned dark, and the soft covers of the bed pulled me deeper and deeper into the black abyss. Oh, it's so cool. So cool. Here we go. We got the 3 doors, guys. I mean, I didn't know you got to choose between the 3 doors. I was always adamant I was going to go left because it was the door that's the only door I'm familiar with. Poll time? Oh, that's a question. Okay. Alfred or Tim, can you guys just give us a small overview without too many spoilers about what's in each door? Maybe like one word about a hint of each door, and then I'll put that as room 1 bracket that, room 2 bracket that, and then that gives people a bit of a hint about what's in each one. Okay, spooky animals, funny faces, trapped in a building. That's great. That's perfect. Oh wow, everyone's gone on door 2. Okay. Is it because I went, oh, creepy? Why did I say something? You guys are mean. Guys, let's do door number 2. Funny. Oh, God, that is funny faces. Jesus. Oh, my God. Guide to funny faces. Okay. Oh, quite uneasy now. This is very uneasy for me because I don't know what to expect. I shot awake, panting heavily, my clothes sticking to my skin due to all the sweat. My eyes darted around the room, but everything was so quiet, I seemed to be safe. A nightmare. Seems like I just had a nightmare. I couldn't remember it anymore, but it must have been horrifying. Chills were still running down my spine. After calming down, I decided to take another look around the house. The fact that no one was here, even though the lights were on, was still nagging at the back of my mind. A look out the window confirmed that it was still night. I'd either slept for a whole day or only a few hours. Considering how tired I must have felt, it must have been the latter. I left the bedroom to retry the doors just in case. They were still locked. I really wanted to go home and take a shower. I smelled my clothes and they indeed started to smell slightly sour. This place seemed to have nothing left to offer. I'd better be out into the streets, even if it was still so dark. All I needed to do was find a police station. They'd definitely be able to help me. As I wandered around, I grew more and more aware of how big this town was. The buildings were as tall and nature was rather scarce. The streets, however, were completely empty. Suddenly, my ears began to pick up the subtle sounds of laughter. The sounds turned to unease on my empty stomach. It was awfully late for such a public crowd. There wasn't cheering or rounds of applause. Just laughter. Loud, obnoxious laughter that didn't seem to subside or grow. It became louder as I approached the town centre. Soon it turned into a wave of commotion by what sounded to be a massive crowd. They just laughed and kept laughing. It sounded dreadful. I was tempted to change course and avoid them, yet this direction was my best bet to finding an inn or a police station. These priorities outweighed my sense of danger. I pressed on. The laughter was bellowing with hundreds of voices until I finally could glimpse the source of the commotion. The crowd gathered around a performer who was doing something to make them laugh. I strained to see the action, peering through the small gaps between the people whilst keeping a safe distance. The group was just too dense. I couldn't see any details. Curiosity overwhelmed me and I started pushing through the people. They seemed to melt away without paying me much attention. As I approached, I passed a table with books. I couldn't make out their title, but I could see something that resembled a mask on the cover. Paying it no mind, I pressed onward. I couldn't understand what was happening. The performer wasn't making any sounds. I couldn't make out any movement from beyond the crowd either. What was so entertaining? Finally, I reached the front. But what I saw was the opposite of funny. It was horrifying. What was wrong with his head? He turned his hips so everyone in the crowd could have a clear view, as if he didn't want anyone to miss it. Why are people laughing at this? A bystander heard me. I don't know, his face just seems so funny. I mean, look at it. I stared at him in disbelief. He and the others really did seem to find this funny. Were they seeing something I wasn't? No matter how I looked at it, it didn't seem like anything other than disturbing. I averted my gaze and walked away. I wanted nothing to do with this madness. I continued to comb through the town centre whilst trying to keep my distance from the crowd. Soon I noticed that the sun had already started to rise, and I still hadn't found anything that even vaguely resembled a police station. Fun fact, that laughter is a recording from a laughing yoga class. Really? Oh my god! That is an awesome fact. You wouldn't have thought it at all. That's crazy. The forced laughing fit the eerie. It really does. That's spot on. That's really well found or clipped. I'm loving the sounds of the music. It's so cool, isn't it? With you, it's so good. It's kind of creepy, isn't it? I had walked by a girl that was standing nearby. She was watching the crowd from a distance. Yeah, it is. I was glad to hear that someone else was thinking the same. An awkward pause followed. I had been under the impression that she wanted to start up a conversation, but I guess that wasn't the case. My stomach broke the silence. Are you hungry? Blood shot to my face. It was true that I was feeling starved. Swallowing my pride, I nodded. I have a sandwich with me. You can have it. Are you sure? No worries. I'm not hungry anyways. I had to hold myself back as not to lunge at it. But I kept my cool and I ate it cautiously as not to embarrass myself. Some of my strength returned to me. In the meanwhile, I decided to ask her about this town. Sorry, I don't really know my way around here that well. Oh, so you're not from here? No, not really. Maybe I could help you look. I'm feeling a bit uneasy about being alone here anyways. I glanced back in the direction of the laughing crowd. Sure, I'd really appreciate that. I'm Scott, by the way. I'm May. Nice to meet you. We set off to look for help. The idea to call someone I knew from May's phone came up, but she didn't have it on her, unfortunately. We approached several people to ask them for directions, but all of them seemed to ignore us. Shameless plug, the soundtrack is free on Bandcamp. Yes, put a link in, link in, Tim. People love the soundtrack, please download it. I believe it. Yeah, it's free, so fill your boots, guys. You know, it's a fantastic soundtrack. I tried to make some small talk with May every now and then, but her replies were always short and didn't leave much room for follow-ups. But she seemed perked up when I asked her about her family. I have a sister. At first I thought that would be all I'd get out of her, but she continued after a short pause. She's been home more recently. Usually she'd leave early and return late or not return home at all for several days. Her job was really important, so it makes sense. But I was really happy when she told me that she wouldn't go to work for a while. I assumed she was finally able to request some time off, but she continued to work even at home. May hung her head. It seemed like that had touched on a sensitive topic. I thought of ways to console her or cheer her up, but couldn't come up with anything to say. Since I didn't have any siblings, it was hard to relate, but it seemed like she really loved her sister. I could actually relate more to May's sister. Just as her, I too have barely been home due to my work. And just like her, I'd likely been working even if I was home. But as opposed to May's sister, I didn't have anyone who was expecting me back home. I decided against poking any further and instead shifted my focus back to asking people for directions. Without much luck. Oddly enough, it was as if they were all going in the same direction, the town centre. Do you think they're going to see that performer? Silence. Maybe she just hadn't heard me. I turned around to ask her again, but she was nowhere to be seen. Just as I finished that thought, I felt a presence behind me. I slowly turned around. Oh god. Bloody hell. Hi. What the hell? What do you think? Do I look funny? What? No! Get away from me! I took a few steps back, almost afraid the man would lunge at me. But he didn't. He just stood there. I see. Maybe I didn't do it quite right. And with that, he walked off, disappointed. He took a book out of his pocket and started flipping through it. And for some weird reason, he seemed familiar. This town was giving me the creeps. I needed to get out of here as fast as I could. But as I turned round, I saw that most of the people walking by had distorted their faces in one way or another. It was as if the virus had spread whilst we were looking for help. This was madness. I needed to get out of here, but where to? And where was May? I was getting kind of worried. Oh no, first choice of the game, guys. First choice of the game. Stay on the main street. It should be easier to find May or a police station that way. Or go through the back streets and avoid attracting any unwanted attention. I mean, I'm thinking of staying on the main street. The only person we know so far that seems to be relatively on our level, without trying to sound rude, is May. And it would be easier to find her in the main street, whereas if we go in the back streets, we don't know what attention is going to be there. Good or bad. So yeah, I'm going to go with that direction, guys, rightly or wrongly. So let's do it. Let's do it. I felt uneasy around these people, but I didn't want to negatively impact my chances of finding help. Quickly, I hurried off whilst trying to ignore everyone's gaze. But wherever I went, these people were everywhere. On top of that, this town seemed to have no end. I couldn't find a road that led out, no matter how long I searched. Just as I was wondering about what to do, I recognized someone standing near a building. There you are! You had me worried! Oh, I'm sorry. I had something to take care of. That sounded oddly vague. But I didn't want to be rude, so I dropped it. She did give me some sandwich after all. Did you have any luck finding your way back home? No, still nothing. And on top of that, there are all these weird people walking around. Actually, I know someone who might be able to help. You do? Yes, they don't live far from here. How about I introduce you? Oh, yeah, sure. Wasn't she new to this town? Maybe she met them whilst we were separated. I considered questioning her, but this was the only lead I had found so far, and I didn't want to lose this chance. We arrived at an old tall building. I watched May from the corner of my eye. Something seemed different about her, but I couldn't quite put my finger on it. Perhaps it was just my imagination. They live on the highest floor. This building is pretty old and not many people live here anymore, but it's a bit run down. I'd appreciate it if you went first. He didn't protest and led us into the structure. The building was quite desolate, just as she had said. This place made me feel uneasy. I didn't want to stay here any longer than I had to. Not only was I afraid that everything would come down on our heads at any minute, I could only imagine what could lurk in these abandoned halls. I didn't blame her for wanting me to go first. After climbing a set of stairs, May spoke up again. It should be that door at the end of this hall. I saw the door she was referring to. It was probably the only door in the entire building that wasn't damaged. The clean coat of paint was an eerie contrast in the ravaged environment. And the one living there can help me? No reply. I turned around and saw nothing. May was gone. Again. She could have at least said goodbye. I walked up to the door to knock, but it was already open. Maybe I had the wrong door after all, yet May had seemed certain. What should I do? Oh, God. Okay. I actually don't know what to do here. Like, I feel like no matter what we do, we're in a sticky situation. This is the only apartment that's not properly dilapidated, right? So it feels like there's danger on the outside, and it feels like it's creepy going into the apartment. So I actually don't know. I'm gonna look around. Okay, let's take a look around, guys. Let's take a look around. I shouldn't barge into a stranger's home like this. The door being open didn't mean I could just enter, although we did it in the tutorial, but we'll ignore that. My eyes wandered around the hallway, scanning it for anything notable. Maybe I could just wait for them outside. I hadn't noticed that the air in here felt oddly heavy. I made my way back down the hallway when I heard some noise from the ground floor downstairs. Was it another tenant? Maybe they could help me. I wasn't very hopeful, considering how badly it's been going so far, but it was worth a shot. So we've gone from one person to another, in terms of like one potential tenant to another? Oh dear. Slowly I creeped down the steps. I could make out a rhythmic, squishy sound that was getting louder and louder. An uneasy feeling was starting to set in my stomach. As I reached the bottom of the stairs, I saw a red trail on the ground. Blood. It must be blood. It led into an apartment. Its door was wide open. My feet froze. The sound was getting louder, more frantic. I needed to get out of this building. Something horrible was happening in there. But to get out the exit, I had to pass by that door, past the blood trail. I considered going back up, but then I'd be stuck in a dead end. My feet slowly started to move down the last couple of steps. Whoever or whatever was in that room couldn't notice me. Who knew what would happen to me if they did? The squishing became louder and louder the closer I got. Before long, I was standing right by the open door. The nameplate next to it read, Frederick Steiner. I considered quickly running past, but my curiosity overwhelmed me. I peeked in. The room was almost pitch black. The sole window barely let any light through. I saw rhythmic movement in the middle of the room. Someone was hunched over something. As the person lifted their hand once again, I saw a metallic glint in the light. They were holding a knife. They were stabbing someone over and over again. The techniques in the book are too simple. I don't have time for these childish games if I want to be as funny as the most hilarious one. Taking from the face? Nonsense. Why just the face? There's so much missed potential. This is exactly what my studies have been leading up to. She just doesn't get it, but I do. I'll show her what it means to be funny. They were whispering to themselves in a gurgling voice. I had no idea what they were talking about. They must have gone mad. I stepped away, ready to leave this building for good, but my foot slipped on the wet blood. I managed to catch myself and avoid falling, but I couldn't avoid making a sound. The movement inside the room suddenly stopped. Silence. Then their head slowly turned my way. Jesus. Who's there? The person frantically shook their grotesque head around. It seemed like they couldn't see me past all the face modifications. The various body parts fused with their skin wiggled like worms crawling out of their head. Is that you, Sabrina? Have you come to your senses? Have you finally realized that this is the only way to make an actually funny face? Look at me. Soon I will be the most hilarious one. And then... His breathing was getting heavier, even heavier than before. They went back to dismantling their body in front of them. I was safe. They really couldn't see me. I was safe. Trying not to make a sound, I stepped over the bloody trail and very cautiously made my way towards the exit. I definitely did not want to get caught. Soon I was in front of the exit door. I could finally get out. Spooky Mike again. Sorry, guys. Sorry. Oh, man. The air had gotten heavier and my breathing became more ragged. I clutched my chest as I tried to figure out what was going on. A throbbing pain pulsed through my arm. It was as something had stabbed me. I tried to turn around, but I'd already become too weak. My feet gave in and my vision darkened. I could feel a presence near me. The person from the apartment? Before I could find out, my consciousness faded. Oh, that's the end of that chapter. Wow. I don't know if we got a good ending or a bad ending there. If I may say, that felt a little short. But I feel like maybe I made the wrong choices, and that's why it was so short. No, it was really good, though. Very, very good. Really enjoyed that. I feel like we might need to make some different choices if we were to go in that door again. Let's go back in. Let's take some different choices, guys. Let's make some different choices. Yeah. A guide to funny faces. Okay, so I can skip through the text here. I think, can't I? Yeah, so we will skip through the text if that's okay. Okay. So, do we choose the same option and then maybe a different option, or do we choose a completely different option here? Tell you what, for a very different narrative, let's go to the second choice here. So we'll click on go through the back streets and avoid attracting any unwanted attention. See where this leads us. Staying on the main street was too dangerous. The fewer of them I came into contact with, the better. But the moment I stepped into the dark alleyway, a bad feeling welled up inside me. Was I really that much safer here than outside on the streets? I turned around and looked back at the people walking by. Some shot glances my way. Perhaps because I was one of the few people walking around whose face looked normal. This made me nervous. I turned back towards the alleyway. Whatever was awaiting me here couldn't be worse than being surrounded by all those madmen out there. My heartbeat accelerated every time I rounded a corner. I soon noticed that the back street layout was quite elaborate. There were no dead ends, and it seemed to stretch on forever. I should have glimpsed an exit leading to the main street long ago. Was I just walking in circles? Right as I was about to turn another corner, I saw them. I froze in place. The person on the left spoke. It was the voice of a boy. Oh, you're normal. His words caught me off guard. What do you mean by normal? And what's up with those masks? Yeah. I tried to sound confident, but my voice shook slightly. The other child spoke. Her voice sounded like a girl's voice. I'm Amy, and this is my brother Lanny. She suggested to the smaller kid next to her. We're hiding from the other people, those with weird faces. You hiding from them too, right? My body slowly relaxed. It seems like they were really just normal kids. Those masks were still freaking me out though. Yeah, I am. Do you know how we can escape from here or maybe find some help? No, unfortunately not. I thought I knew a good way through these back streets, but I think we're lost. Not because of me though. She wanted to. Amy punched his arm. Ow, hey! If I'd turned right as I said we should have, we wouldn't be lost anymore. That was a dead end, you dimwit. You just didn't see it because your mask is too big. Lanny rubbed his shoulder and started sulking. Why are you wearing those masks in the first place? Some people with those weird faces have been, well, they've been using people with normal faces as material. Lanny flinched as Amy muttered those words. It seemed like they had seen some terrible things. Hiding in these alleyways had been a good idea. Alright, we should probably move on. There has to be a way out of here. I'll stick with you, that way it'll be safer. I couldn't see their faces, but their body language I could tell that they were relieved. I too was happy that there were other normal people out here. While we were walking, I tried to find out more about the siblings and what they knew about the situation. Our parents hadn't come back since yesterday night. We didn't think of it much and assumed that they'd be back late. But when we woke up, they still weren't there. We wanted to ask some neighbours for help, but they weren't home either. I thought we should wait, but I thought that was a dumb idea. If they hadn't come back yet, then something must have happened to them. And you wanted to be a scientist? Oh yeah, your idea turned out so great. And I never said I wanted to be a scientist. I still don't know. Yeah, or artist. Whatever. I tried to steer the conversation to stop a fight from breaking out. Those feel like some pretty contrasting job choices. They do, don't they? I guess both help people in their own ways. At least that's what one neighbour of ours claims whenever she's fighting with another neighbour. We have two neighbours who are close to our family and they... I froze, and so did the siblings. Someone was there, just around the corner. I jerked my head around, trying to find a place to hide. For a second, I considered that they could be someone normal, someone just like us. Someone who was just as freaked out by whatever was going on in this city as we were. But I didn't want to take any necessary risks, and I especially didn't want to put these kids in danger. I spotted a big garbage container not too far from us and quickly pushed Amy and Lanny towards it. We made it just in time. Amy held her breath. Lanny was fidgeting slightly. No, he was trembling. I was afraid that he would make too much noise, but he managed to pull himself together. Silence. Was the person just standing there, looking down the alleyway we were in? Or were they already gone and we had just hadn't heard him leave? I managed to suppress my curiosity and decided to not peer around the corner of the container. Lanny apparently couldn't. I was about to stop him and pull him back, but it was already too late. He had already peeked out of our hiding spot. His body relaxed slightly and he spoke in a hushed tone. Amy, it's Frederick, our neighbour. Oh, we've met Frederick. Oh no. Oh no, did we meet? Yeah, we did meet Frederick. We did meet Frederick. Amy perked up. It seemed like they knew this person. As Amy saw my puzzled expression, she started to explain. Don't worry, Frederick is the neighbour we were talking about. He's a bit of a nerd since he's a researcher, but he's pretty cool otherwise. That last remark stung a bit, seeing as I was a researcher myself, but I decided to ignore it. Here, have this, just in case. I'll go talk to him. Lanny shoved his mask into my hands and jumped out of our cover. As I was about to grab and stop him, but my hands gripped empty air. Amy jumped up as well and ran after him, likely realizing how dangerous his idea was. I hesitated, but just for a second. There was no way I could let those two go out there by themselves. If something went wrong, I had to be there to protect them. I hesitantly put on the mask Lanny had given me and stepped out of our hiding spot. Lanny had since called out to Frederick and was now approaching him. I froze when I saw him. That was the guy I'd met earlier, and his face was still as ravaged as before. How Lanny had recognized him was beyond me. Lanny stopped a few feet from Frederick. Are you all right? Your face? Did they do this? Frederick had a puzzled look on his face at first, but his expression soon softened. Oh, that? How do I look? Terrible. Why can't they just leave us normal people alone? Frederick's expression darkened. My feet moved by themselves and I was quickly approaching Lanny. Lanny was under the misconception that someone else had done this to Frederick, but I knew that he was one of them. I quickly overtook Amy, who had stopped at a safe distance, and stood between Frederick and Lanny. Frederick glanced at me. It seemed like he didn't recognize me because of the mask. I was about to tell him to leave us when suddenly... I gasped for air. My stomach. He had kicked me in the stomach. I could hear Amy gasp from behind me as my knees gave in. My insides grew hot as I held onto my belly, my view fixed on the grey asphalt from below me. Then I heard Lanny cry out. I jerked my head up, still unable to get up due to the pain. Frederick had grabbed Lanny and was pulling him backwards the way Frederick had come from. I was hoping to find someone whose face was in an impeccable shape, just as yours. You make for some nice material. Hey, let go! Lanny was struggling with all his might, but Frederick was stronger. He picked Lanny up and he threw him up against the wall. Lanny's head collided with the hard surface and his body went limp. Before I was able to heave myself up, Amy had apparently freed herself from her frozen state. She ran past me and towards Frederick. Stop! Let him go! She must have known that winning against an adult was impossible for her, but her judgment was clouded by her desire to save her brother, all because I had been too careless and let Frederick hit me. But before Amy could throw herself onto Frederick, he turned around and hit her with his backhand. She staggered to the side, her mask flying off her face. Her expression was twisted in pain. Frederick froze as he saw what was under the mask, a normal face. Oh wow, 2 potential donors. A sick grin formed on his dismembered face. My feet finally stopped wobbling and I managed to stand up. I had to help Amy, otherwise Frederick would take her too. I charged forward as Frederick started approaching her and was about to tackle him when... Once again a hot feeling spread throughout my stomach. The difference was he hadn't knocked me out this time. He hadn't kicked me this time, sorry. I stumbled backwards and looked down. Blood. My feet gave in once again. Frederick was holding a knife. He had stabbed me. Right, where was I? He fixed his eyes at Amy, who was staring back at him, frozen in fear. Carrying 2 might be too difficult, but I don't want to leave you here like this either. Ah, I got it. He started rummaging through his pockets. Shortly after, he pulled out something small. I glanced at Amy. She had tears in her eyes. My brain was screaming that I had to help her, but my body wouldn't move. I had lost too much blood. Having a funny face is good and all, but I wanted to approach this from a scientific perspective. There had to be a way to capitalize on this new trend. Maybe I could finally win a prize or 2. Coincidentally, I found some odd mushrooms not too long ago. After some experiments, I discovered that they had the potential to influence someone's facial arrangement. So I went ahead and made this. He held something that looked like a small pill. Amy started to crawl backwards, but her back soon hit a wall. Admittedly, I haven't had a chance to try it out yet. That's where you come in. He was now standing right in front of Amy and bent down. You should thank me. Many people would attain face comedy enlightenment, as I'll call it. Maybe I'll be able to sell as many books as the most hilarious one. He jerked forward and grabbed Amy's face, trying to force the pill into her mouth. I tried crawling towards him, but almost all my strength had left me. Amy was trying her best to keep Frederick off, but he was too strong. Her muffled screams were heart-wrenching, and then she gulped. Frederick stepped back, satisfied. All right, let's see. It should start any second now. I closed my eyes. I could tell that Amy was flailing in pain. She tried to scream, but all that came out was a deep gurgle. A few more painful seconds had stopped. All went quiet. Well, the face looks all right, but it seems like I have to tweak it some more before it's distribution ready. I heard footsteps. Frederick had picked Lanny back up and was now leaving the alleyway. My eyes were still firmly closed. I didn't want to look. I didn't want to see what happened to Amy, but I had to know if she was really dead or if she could still be saved. I slowly opened my eyes. Oh no, not Amy. No. Why did this have to happen to them? Why hadn't I been able to help them? Amy. She didn't respond. I looked down the alleyway. There was no trace of Lanny or Frederick. They were gone. And soon I would die too. I was steadily losing blood, and there was no way anyone would find me and help me. I closed my eyes. As my consciousness faded, I felt a small sting in my back, as if something had stabbed me. It was barely noticeable, and then everything went dark. Oh man, we've chosen 2 not so good endings. I mean, I don't think there's going to be many good endings in this game anyway, but I mean, we've had 2 no experiences so far. Okay, you know what? We've already chosen two pathways in this. I feel like we need to continue and try a 3rd one. So stay on the main street. So we go into this building and we're going to enter the apartment this time, as Darkstalker suggested before. Perhaps they had forgot to lock the door, or May had already notified them that we were coming and they left it open for us. I gave the door a soft push. Hello? No reply. It was a very small apartment. The door opened to the living room, which seemed to double as their bedroom. A single corridor led to 2 more rooms, likely the bathroom and the kitchen. Just like the door itself, everything looked way too clean and tidy compared to the hallway outside. I stepped in and peered through a window, hoping to spot this person that I was supposed to meet. Everything looked normal from up here, but I knew this wasn't the case. Something was wrong with this town, and I was trapped here. Would I ever be able to return home? I had people who relied on me. Would my team at the lab manage without me? I tore myself away from the window. This wasn't the time to think about that. I should be concentrating on finding a way out. Oh, okay, we've got 2 new options then. On the hypothetical here, those of you that don't know this game, I'd imagine this take a look around option is going to be similar to the take a look around outside of the apartment option. Unless it means take a look around the apartment, but then I don't know what the difference is between stay here and wait and take a look around. So I'm going to click on stay here and wait, because that's the second option to me sounds like it might be going out the apartment again, which didn't end so well last time. So I'm going to stay here and wait. I shouldn't be too noisy. After all, I was just a guest, so I waited. Suddenly I hear a sound outside the apartment. I hastily slipped inside a closet and carefully pulled it shut. I wasn't sure why I was hiding, but I had an awful feeling in my guts. Finding a stranger standing in your apartment probably wouldn't be something someone would take in stride. Then again, finding one in your closet would be even worse. Oh god. I watched through slits in the door as they entered the apartment. They stopped in the entryway and took a look around the room. Was this the tenant? Shadows were obscuring part of their body. I strained my eyes, trying to see what they looked like. But what I saw made me cover my mouth to suppress a gasp. No. The woman's face was ravaged. Fleshy chunks clung to her forehead. Were those face parts? Forgot to close the door again. She spoke to herself and moved as if nothing was wrong, but her face, it was horrendous. She walked up to the mirror. This looks so much better, just like in the book. I should check the text again. I may have missed something. She picked up the book that was lying on the desk and flipped it open. I see. I need more. Yes, I definitely need more. She looked back to the mirror and caressed her disfigured face. She backed towards the exit and left the apartment. Her eyes never left the mirror. I remained frozen in the closet for a few more minutes. My heart slowly calmed itself. Once I was sure she was really gone, I stepped out. I needed to get myself as far away from this building and this town as fast as I possibly could. As I was about to leave the apartment, a sudden wave of fatigue came over me. It's as if I stepped into a veil. The air had gone heavier, my breathing became more ragged. We've read these lines before. I clutched my chest as I tried to figure out what was going on. A throbbing pain pulsed through my arm, as if something had stabbed me. I tried to turn around, but I'd already become too weak. My feet gave in and my vision darkened. I could feel a presence near me. The woman? May? Before I could find out, my consciousness faded. Another ending? Okay. Okay, so we're gonna check around then the second time. I know we've got the load, but I'm gonna keep on saving forward so we can keep the progress going in our save file instead of loading back up. So we're gonna enter the apartment this time, and then we're gonna look around. So we've not seen this one yet. Oh god, okay, we've got different options here now. Right, okay. Check the pictures, check the desk, and check the other rooms. So that woman was fixated on the mirror, and she was looking at a book, but we're not sure what the book is unless it's on the desk, maybe? I kind of feel like maybe checking the desk might work. Looking at this illustration, I'm assuming the book's on the desk. And I want us to check that book, because we need to know what's in it before we can even try and find a solution, right? Check the desk. The surface of the desk was crammed with beauty products. A single mirror was standing amongst them. A small book was buried beneath the clutter. Check the book. I moved the small bottles aside and picked up the book underneath. The cover depicted a mask with a distorted facial expression. The title read, The Art of Humour. I don't think that was the book we were looking for, though, was it? There was another book that people have mentioned before. I flipped through it. It was apparently a guide by the most... the most hilarious one who wrote the book, wasn't it? So this is the book. Okay, cool. It's apparently a guide by the most hilarious one that explained how to make funny faces. But the pictures in the book were more disturbing than humorous. One description of a technique caught my eye. Finally, we arrive at addition. Like removal, this is a very risky technique, reserved only for the cream of the crop. It may sound simple, though. All you have to do is add and never stop. Search for features that add a disgrace to facial humor, then take them for yourself and pair them off. The person might even thank you for all your help with removal. I glanced at the pictures beside the text and shook my head in disgust. I started skimming through it quickly, and sure enough, it was full of similar depictions. On the very last page, I came to a sudden stop. There was a key taped to it. Did the key come with the book, or did the owner of the book hide it in here? Oh well, it didn't matter to me anyway, since I don't know what door this key was for. I placed the book back the way it was before. I mean, do we not get the choice to have the key? You never know when a key would be useful in a video game. I'm going to check the other rooms here, because I'm interested in knowing what's in the house. I walked down the corridor and towards the other two rooms. As I suspected, it was just the bathroom and the kitchen. Something about the bathroom caught my eye. It was filled with countless beauty products. Scarily many beauty products. The shelves were overflowing. I could barely see the counter. Even the floor was littered with them. Shaking my head, I went back to the living room. Okay. I mean, again, it's given us the choice to the other rooms again. Does that mean that we get to check the kitchen? I'm going to check the pictures here just because it's the only option we haven't taken. I am interested in knowing if we were to click that, if we were to go into the kitchen. If we were to click on that, would we check the mirror? But we haven't checked this, so I feel like we should check all three options. I don't know what that was, but that. I took a look at the pictures hanging on the walls. Most of them were paintings that depicted nature. Only a few of them were photographs. One with a note scribbled on it caught my eye. It depicted a man and a woman having a picnic. The note said, Sabrina and Frederick BFF. Oh, right. So Frederick, interesting. Okay, so is this Sabrina? Is Sabrina this woman? It seemed like one of them was living here, or maybe both. At the very least, I would now be able to recognize the tenant once I see them. Suddenly I heard a sound outside of the apartment. I hastily slipped inside a closet and carefully pulled it shut. I wasn't sure why I was hiding, but I had an awful feeling in my guts. We've read this before. Taking a look around. Okay, so what I want to do this time is I want to check the desk and then the mirror. So the surface of the desk was crammed with beauty products. A single mirror was standing amongst them. A small book was buried beneath the clutter. Check the mirror. My own reflection peered back at me. I looked like I had aged a decade. My lack of sleep had really done a number on me. Not to mention all these strange occurrences today. If I ever get out of all of this, I'll need a long vacation, I thought. As I looked in the mirror, a newspaper page hanging on the wall behind me caught my eye. I approached it and skimmed it in case I had any hints on what was going on in this town. But it was unfortunately wrong. The issue with... oh my god. Kejaminth News, as the paper was called, was several years old. The subheading read, A rising new artist has wowed the judges at the Kejaminth art competition. We can't wait to see her next work. She has a bright future ahead of her, one of the judges said. This article didn't seem to be important to her current situation. Yes, it does. What? And I couldn't see any more newspaper snippets around. Disappointed, I averted my gaze and took another look around the room. Okay. Now I'm going to check the other rooms twice. So I walked down the corridor and towards the other two rooms. As I suspected, it was just a bathroom and the kitchen. Something about the bathroom caught my eye. We've read this already. It was filled with countless beauty products, scarily many beauty products. The shelves were overflowing and I could barely see the counter. Even the floor was littered with them. Shaking my head, I went back into the living room. Okay, I want to check again to see if we can go into the kitchen. I'll walk down the corridor towards the other two rooms. So it's just repeating. Okay, it's just repeating. Right, okay. Okay. Right, okay. I don't know if we can do anything else here. I feel like we've hit a dead end here. That's why I'm not reading this, as you can tell, because as far as I'm aware, this is going to skip ahead, isn't it? Yep. Okay. I don't think there's much else to do in that second door. Yep, story-wise, you've gone through everything. If you want a small hint on what else you can do, you can get a key in each of the doors. Okay. Get hints on how to get the keys after playing through all the doors. Gotcha. Okay, right. When I know that now, that's great. I'm going to choose the first door this time, because it's the one I am familiar with. So this was the game I played in the demo. Not played. I didn't play it. I watched it being played. Pets. Oh, we got the laughing faces. That's interesting. I shot awake, panting heavily, my clothes sticking to my skin due to all the sweat. My eyes darted around the room, but everything was quiet. I seemed to be safe. A nightmare. Seems like I just had a nightmare. There were people laughing. The faces. I couldn't remember, but it must have been terrifying. The pulsing pain in my head slowly subsided. I took deep breaths and kept mumbling to myself that it had all been a dream. Nothing more. After calming down, I decided to take another look around the house. The fact that no one was here, even though my lights were on, was still nagging at the back of my head. But I was more confident that I'd be able to find help now that it was daytime. I left the bedroom to retry the doors, just in case. They were still locked. I just wanted to go home and take a shower. I smelled my clothes, and they indeed had started to smell slightly sour. This place seemed to have nothing left to offer. I'd better be off out on the streets now that it was daytime. If I wasn't missing my wallet, then I'd be getting something to eat as well. I was starving. I left the house for the bright sunlight. The back street didn't seem so bad anymore. I found it to be rather cozy and quaint. I made my way down the path until I heard a faint sound of a conversation in the distance. A weight lifted from my heart when I first glimpsed people walking around in this pedestrian area. Right, there wasn't many of them as I looked around and got the feeling that this was a rather small town. Trees and flowers were planted at regular intervals, which gave it more of a rural atmosphere. It didn't matter. I could finally ask for help. Excuse me, can you tell me where I am? The woman blinked at my approach. She frowned and scowled in my general direction. This is Kejamith. Alright, so okay, right, that's interesting now. So this is definitely... We definitely know the name of this town now, based on the two paths we've taken. So this is Kejamith. I'm saying that wrong, I apologise, but I think it's Kejamith. Sorry. I'm butchering everything here. She looked uncomfortable talking to me, so I thanked her and let her be. Kejamith. I'd never heard of a town with that name. Where? How did I end up here? The thought of being somewhere I didn't recognise scared me. How was I supposed to get back home if I didn't have the slightest idea where to go? I took a deep breath to calm myself down. My next best bet would be to ask someone to allow me to make a call from their mobile phone. I approached an older man in a business suit. Excuse me, may I use your phone? I'm a bit lost and would like to call a friend of mine so he can pick me up. His lips curled in a grimacing frown. Sorry, I'm in a bit of a hurry. I approached person after person, but I had no luck. No one wanted to lend an unkempt, half-dressed stranger their phone. As I made my way through a side street, I overheard two elderly women. I heard of some violent incidents recently. Most got away with just a flesh wound, saying that they were attacked by someone or something. Yeah, I heard that too. I wonder if it had anything to do with the pet disappearances. I heard of another cat that hadn't come back in several days. I was so focused on the conversation I almost ran into a girl. I mumbled an apology until I realized she had approached me on purpose. Oh, okay, so this is May, isn't it? This is interesting. I didn't know this girl was going to appear in different stories. This is very interesting. Hi. Hi. You need to call someone, right? She extended her hand and offered me her phone. How did you know? I've seen you asking people for one. She nervously shuffled her feet and glanced away. Thank you. I won't take long. I took her phone. It was a red flip phone with a small panda hanging from the strap. The top bar read, May's phone. Her background was set to a picture of herself in a pedestrian area. That place in the picture looked oddly familiar, but I was likely just imagining it. I brushed that thought aside and dialed a friend's number, but the call didn't go through. I tried it again, but the results was the same. Maybe their phone was turned off? I tried my parents' house phone, then my job's front desk, then my boss's personal cell. Each time the call failed. I was sure I had the right numbers. Maybe the phone had a bad connection? It seems like the calls won't connect for some reason. Maybe you'll have more luck trying a landline. My phone does act up sometimes. You might be right. Still, thank you. I didn't want to hold her up any longer, so I gave her the phone back. After a rushed farewell, I wandered off. I wanted to quickly look for another way to get in contact with someone I knew. It occurred to me that I should have asked her for directions to the police station. I turned to look for her, but she had already vanished. As I made my way through town, I could definitely feel the tension in the air. She was right. Everyone was on edge. While I was passing by an alleyway, something caught my eye. They were too big to be rats. I couldn't really make anything out other than their eerie, glowing eyes. Maybe it was a cat gang searching the trash for food. Apropos food, I was starving, but I couldn't possibly ask random people to feed me, and since my wallet was missing, I didn't have any money on me to buy something. Though there were oddly tempting-looking plants growing nearby. Buds fixed on thick stems were sticking out of the ground. Each plant was surrounded by a number of small mushrooms. As I stared at them, I felt a pull. The strange appearance hypnotized me without me noticing, my feet inched closer and closer and closer. Eat them or don't eat them. Eat. Okay, we're eating the plants. Alright, here we go. I couldn't really think while hungry, and who knew how long it had been since I had eaten, so it was probably either this or starving. I dug in. They didn't even taste that bad. Kind of grassy, but edible. Although it grew harder and harder to chew with every bite, something red dripped onto the ground. I suddenly realised that a liquid was coming out of my mouth. I couldn't tell if it was blood or the plant's juices. More started to pour out as I panicked and tried to figure out what was going on. While peeling around my mouth, I realised that I had become totally numb. Suddenly a fleshy chunk fell onto the red pool that had started to form before my feet. Was that my tongue? My vision became blurry and my stiff body hit the cold ground. It was dark when I awoke. I could make out that I was still lying next to the plants. It seemed like no one had bothered to help me. I tried to get up, but I couldn't. My whole body was paralyzed. I felt a sudden sting traveling from my head to my feet, and the pain grew by the second. Something was happening to me. My hand was being bent into an impossible position. Not just my hand, my whole body. It was warping, but it seemed like I couldn't handle the transformation. My body writhed and snapped in two. Try again or give up. We didn't get this option in the second door, did we? So, should we try again? So, we're going to go with don't eat them. I broke away from the hypnotic pull of the plants. What was I thinking? It didn't matter how hungry I was, they may be poisonous. But my hunger was beginning to gnaw at my insides. My vision grew blurry. Who knew how long it had been since I'd eaten? And suddenly, I collapsed and the world around me vanished. It was dark when I awoke. It seemed like no one had bothered to help me. I tried to get up, but I couldn't. My whole body was paralyzed from hunger. Something was shuffling by my ear. I felt the sniffing of an animal. Perhaps one of those cats I saw earlier. I couldn't bring myself to look. It lost interest and walked past me towards the plants. I heard more follow. As they padded into view, I noticed that something was off about them. It must have been my mind playing tricks on me. My hunger was overwhelming. Something about their bodies was wrong. They started to eat the plants. They were smacking rather loudly and made natural fleshy sounds. Every now and again they would pause and give off a low growl that didn't at all sound like a cat's. It was more like a slightly higher pitched bear growl. After a while, the sounds diminished and I felt their presence vanish. I gathered my strength and forced myself to my feet. What had just happened? What were those creatures? The violent crimes that I'd heard about earlier popped into my mind. My hands began to shake. What would have happened if I hadn't been paralyzed and they had noticed that I was still alive? I took a cautious look around. Most house lights were still lit. I mustn't have been out for long. Once again, my body gave up a deep growl. It was as if my stomach was eating itself. I had to get some food or else I was in danger of collapsing again. So, are we going to ask for help or are we going to take a look around? Right, let's take a look around. No one would open their door for a disheveled stranger. Instead of wasting my time going from house to house, I should take another look around town. I should be able to find a police station eventually. I picked a random direction and headed off, but I soon realized that finding a police station proved to be more difficult than I expected. The streets were completely empty, meaning I couldn't ask anyone for directions, and the further I went, the more abandoned the apartment buildings looked. Did I wander into a deserted part of town by accident? The street looked oddly familiar, though. As I wandered through the dark alleyways, an odd feeling started to well up within me. It felt as if I was being watched. I took a look around. My eyes scanned the buildings, which were being barely illuminated by the dim streetlights. I spotted something at the entrance of an alleyway. It looked like a small figure. Whatever it was too dark to make out. My eyes were probably just playing tricks on me. It must have been a garbage can or something, right? I tried to rationalize what I had seen and continued at a faster pace. Was I overreacting? There's only one way to find out. I made a sharp turn away from the main street and abruptly stopped. If someone really was following me, then I'd be able to ambush them as I entered this alleyway. I realized too late that they would have had the advantage if they had a weapon with them. Someone was there. I braced myself. Right as they were about to turn into the alleyway, I jumped out, fists raised. The person gave a shriek and stumbled backwards, falling onto the floor. Just as I was about to question them why they were following me, I realized they weren't a threat. This person who had followed me was a small boy. He looked up at me, his eyes filled with fear. Why were you following me? I slowly unclenched my fists. He need help for my sister. Your sister? He seemed to realize that I wasn't planning to hurt him and slowly got up. Yeah, she's hurt. I was only following you to see if you were one of them. I had a ton of questions, but if sister is in danger, then my first priority should be helping her. Alright, show me where your sister is. His face brightened and he led me back down the alley I'd just come from. Now that he knew I wasn't trying to hurt him, he became quite talkative. I'm Lanny, by the way. My sister's name is Amy. Okay. Right. Okay, so we are starting to find similarities now between the two stories. So we've met Lanny, Amy, and May already in both stories now. We are currently hiding from those pets in one of the abandoned houses. Have you seen one yet? They're really scary. His words were flowing out like a waterfall. As he made a short pause to breathe, I quickly intersected. What pets are you talking about? What did you mean when you said I wasn't one of them? You really don't know? Well, I don't really know how to explain it. He seemed to be deep in thought. But before he could elaborate, we'd already arrived. Amy is in here. We were standing in front of an old abandoned house. Several of the windows were broken. One of them was partly boarded up with wooden planks. Lanny stopped in the entry. I was about to ask him what we were waiting for when he started whistling quietly. It was a slow and somber melody that reverberated through the empty halls of the building. The atmosphere created sent shivers down my spine, and then it was over. Lanny stepped into the hallway and followed quickly behind him. Seeing how stumped I was, he explained. It's something Amy and me agreed on. If she hears someone come in, she's supposed to run away unless I whistle this melody. I came up with it today. Pretty good, eh? The melody, I mean. The plan was alright, I guess, but it was Amy's. We made our way inside, walked up the stairs, and stopped in front of a dark room. Not far from the entrance, I could make out a shadowy figure sitting on the ground. Amy, it's me. I brought someone. Amy perked up as she heard her brother's voice. I quickly stepped inside and was about to rush to her side, but jerked back. Her arms. No! Amy, no! Oh, God. No! What happened? I had whispered it, but it seemed like Amy had heard me nevertheless. I ate a piece of the plants. Then my arms began to hurt, and now... She broke off. How could eating a piece of a plant have caused this? This didn't make any sense, but I had more urgent things to do at the moment. Does one of you have a telephone? We need to call an ambulance. Lanny looked at me apologetically. There's no one at the hospital. They're all either dead or they're too obsessed with the pets. No one at the hospital? And he'd mentioned those pets again. Just what the hell was going on here? Just as I was about to ask, I heard a thumping sound from within the house. Lanny jerked around, fear-stricken. Is it them? Amy's voice was weak. She was about to faint. Her arms must have been causing her a lot of pain. I'll check it out. You two stay here. I tried to sound confident, but my voice shook slightly. After what Lanny had told me, I couldn't help but feel scared. But as the only adult here, I had to be the one to protect them. And so I slowly made my way back down the stairs. I'd heard something yet again. It sounded vaguely like a growl. One that was oddly similar to the one I'd heard whilst I was laying in the alleyway. Could it be one of those pets? As I reached the bottom of the stairs, I could vaguely make out some slight movement further down the hall. It was as if something was sniffing the air. I looked around to see if anything could be used. I looked around to see if I could use anything as a weapon. There was indeed a wooden board lying on the ground near the window next to me. I carefully picked it up and gripped it tightly whilst inching closer and closer towards the creature. Weirdly enough, it seemed like it was ignoring me. As I was almost close enough to make out what it looked like, it perked up. I stopped. Time seemed to slow to a halt. A foul feeling slowly spread throughout my stomach. I lifted the board up a bit higher and readied myself to attack. And then it lunged. I closed my eyes and flailed the wooden plank in the direction of the creature, but I'd only hit empty air. It was over, I thought. I'd missed it, and now it would kill me. But nothing happened. All I heard was something scurrying up the stairs. I opened my eyes and whipped my head round to see the source of the sound, but the creature had already reached to the top of the stairs, and then I heard a scream. It was Lanny. I ran upstairs. Amy was still lying in the same spot, but it seemed like she had finally fallen unconscious. Next to her was a blood trail leading into another room. Lanny couldn't have been. A sound of breaking bones and fleshy smacking leaked out of the room. I knew what was happening without having to see it. I lifted my weapon without even thinking, and I was just about to step closer to the room's entryway. But I stopped. There's no way I could fight whatever it was with a rotting wooden plank. And I couldn't save Lanny anymore. It was too late. I needed to get out of here. No, more importantly, I needed to get Amy out of here. There had to be someone out there who could help us. Lanny's words echoed in my head, but he couldn't have been right. The police would do something about this, wouldn't they? Or the military? I was about to go back towards Amy, but a sudden wave of fatigue came over me. It's as if I stepped into a veil. The air had gotten heavier and my breathing became more ragged. I clutched my chest as I tried to figure out what was going on. A throbbing pain pulsed through my back. It's as if someone had stabbed me. I tried to turn around, but I'd already become too weak. My feet gave in and my vision darkened. I could feel a presence near me. Was it that monster? Before I could find out, my consciousness faded. There we go. So the two stories have ended almost identically. So that's interesting, isn't it? Okay, so we've definitely got some options there, guys, with that second door. So we'll keep going into there. Okay, right. So let's skip through the dialogue. Oh, it's because it's different dialogue, isn't it? So a nightmare. Seems like I just had a nightmare. I couldn't remember it anymore, but But it must have been horrifying. Chills were still running down my spine. Can we skip now? Yep. So this is the same dialogue, isn't it? So we're not going to eat them. Ask for help. So because we didn't do that last time. So let's do that now. I was sure that they'd turned me away, but I was desperate. This was an emergency after all. And certainly, I approached the closer's house and knocked. I was surprised when the door actually opened. Hi there, come on in. How nice of you to visit. Before me stood a fashionably dressed woman with a big smile on her face. She seemed welcoming, but her movements were rather stiff and almost mechanical. It was as if they had been practiced over and over again. The hat, the scarf, and the bag around her shoulder suggested she was just about to leave. She seemed to notice my confused look. Oh, the bag, don't worry about it. I just think it suits me. I've still gotten used to wearing it around the house. That seemed impractical, but I guess she was very conscious about her appearance. Now come in, everyone's already inside. Do we know each other? She took another thorough look at me and seemed to realise that we did in fact not know each other. Ah, you must be the new neighbour then. I'm Sabrina, come on in. Okay, so we've met Sabrina. Well, we meet Sabrina in the second door? We've heard of her name, and she might have been that woman at the end of the apartment area, but we don't know because she was so distorted. But otherwise, we were possibly meeting Sabrina for the first time here, guys. She disappeared before I could correct her. I hesitantly followed her inside. On my way in, I saw a pet food bowl near the entrance with some of the strange-looking plants in it. Huh, she'd been feeding those to her pet. I peeked into the living room. A man leapt to his feet and he saw me and stretched his big hand out to me. His coat suggested that he was active in the scientific field, and he had gotten here right after work. His other arm hung down limply. Hi there, it's nice to meet you. I'm Frederick. How are you doing? Okay, so we've met Frederick again now. So we definitely have met Frederick twice now. Okay, this is interesting then, isn't it? Hi there, it's nice to meet you. I'm Frederick. How are you doing? I reciprocated his firm handshake and he cheerfully suggested to me to take a seat beside him. To my surprise, the girl who had helped me earlier was here as well. Okay, so this is different then. I believe her name was May. She gave me a small wave. So May wasn't really interacting with the adults really in the second door, but she seems to be in this one. That's interesting. It's starting to feel like a festivity. We should have neighbourhood get-togethers like this more often. Oh, right, this is... She turned and frowned in my direction while trying to remember the name she hadn't asked me for. Scott. I'm Scott. Right, Scott. He moved in nearby recently, I think, so I thought we should invite him as well. Certainly, it's just nice to see you. No, I'm not really. Oh, right, give me a second. She rushed into the kitchen and came out with steaming dishes of food. I could make out different kinds of meat, baked potatoes, and more. My stomach gave off a deep growl and my mouth began to water. Any thought of honesty about my origin was gone. The other visitors started piling food onto their plates and I followed suit. As I devoured it and life came back into my body, I let my eyes wander over the others. Everyone seemed to be tense, especially Sabrina and Frederick. Their movements were rather stiff. Every now and again they'd throw glances at each other's way, glances that seemed to indicate mistrust. Okay. Sabrina seemed to especially be eyeing the cup that Frederick was drinking out of. Every now and then, when they'd notice each other's looks, they'd put on a fake smile. May seemed like she hadn't planned to be here in the first place. Was she dragged into it, just like I was? As I was cleaning my plate of its scraps, something important flashed into my mind. Excuse me, would you mind if I used your phone? Sabrina tisked. I'm afraid I don't have one. I never cared for those buggers. She looked over to Frederick. Maybe he can use yours. Of course. I can show you to my house once we're ready to go. I gave off a sigh of relief and thanked Frederick. He waved his hand in the air. No problem at all. Please excuse me for one moment, though. He shuffled out of the room, presumably towards the bathroom. All right, I'll make some more tea. She scooped up Frederick's cup and left me alone with May. I cleared my throat and nodded in May's direction. Thank you again for lending me your phone. I did appreciate that. You're welcome. I hope you will have more luck with the landline. Yeah, I hope so too. And I guess that was the end of that conversation. Perhaps she felt uncomfortable speaking to a weird-smelling stranger. I'm going to wash my dishes. And there she went. The other two were taking quite a while. I used the opportunity to let my eyes wander around the room. The walls were dressed with paintings of all kinds, pictures of nature as well as more abstract drawings. A framed piece of paper and a photograph that was standing on the drawer beneath caught my eye. The former seemed to be an art degree, the latter a picture of Frederick and Sabrina when they were younger. They were standing somewhere that could be a university campus. Both had genuine smiles on their faces. It seemed like their friendship went back quite a bit. Oh. Hey. It's a bit creepy, May. Whoa. Did she sneak up behind me? I thought I had a clear view of the kitchen entrance. I think I heard some rumbling coming from downstairs. It'd probably be a good idea to check it out in case Sabrina hurt herself. Oh. Well, Sabrina has been gone for quite a while. Maybe something did happen to her. Perhaps I should take a look. What about Frederick? May's face slightly tensed up as she heard his name. Frederick is still occupied. The way she said his name sounded almost hostile, but she sounded convincingly confident either way. I felt May's eyes follow me to the basement. I squinted down the stairs. It was almost pitch black. I swallowed back my nerves and carefully crept down into the darkness. Maybe I should call out to Sabrina, but something told me not to. Why was she down here? Didn't she tell us that she wanted to make more tea? I managed to reach the bottom stair and peeked around the corner. There I saw her kneeling by lamplight in front of the large cage. A basket of the strange plants sat beside her. There, it's all right. Take a good sniff at the cup. We need to hurry, okay? I know that he's growing another one. I know he sent one after their parents. I'll avenge them and get rid of my biggest rival in one go. She held Frederick's cup to the bars. Something in her voice disturbed me. Whatever was going on, I wanted no part of it. I returned to the living room as quietly as I could. There you are, all ready to go? Upon hearing Frederick's loud voice, I jumped. What I had seen in the basement had made me anxious. I took a quick look around and saw that May was already gone. Sure, I'm ready. Leaving already? I just made some more tea. I turned to see Sabrina standing in the living room entrance with a practiced smile. Ah, sorry dear, I'm just not young enough to stay out like we used to. She put on a playful pout. Oh, you do wound me. Come by again. You know you're welcome any time. We bid our farewells and set out into the cold night. I was glad to leave. What I'd seen is still nagging on my mind. Frederick might be in danger. I had to tell him. I hesitated. How was I supposed to tell him when I, myself, wasn't sure what I had seen? But I collected myself and went for it. To my surprise, he wasn't nearly as upset as Sabrina as I thought he would be. He actually seemed to be more upset at me. I think you should not have snooped around the house of someone who invited you over. I was left perplexed. What had just happened? I thought I was warning him, but instead I've been scolded like a child. His face relaxed and he gave me his usual smile. It seemed slightly pained this time. I suppose there's been no harm done. Perhaps he just didn't believe me. I couldn't blame him. I noticed more and more vacant houses as we crept through the town. Some were boarded up. Doors had been left wide open. Why are there so many empty houses here? These houses have been vacant for a while now. I was sure that I passed by here earlier, but I didn't notice any abandoned buildings back then. And an uneasy feeling started to fester inside of me. Here we are. We stopped before a house that looked much like every other house in this town. We stepped inside. I hesitated at the entrance before trailing behind him. Come on in. No need to be shy. Do you want something to drink? No thanks. Frederick hesitantly grunted and led me down the hallway. I only wanted to use the phone and get out. Everything that happened today had me on edge. But what if I still couldn't reach anyone? Where would I go? I was balancing a fine line between hope and despair. The phone call would be what would top me in either direction. All right, here you are. The phone seemed rather old-fashioned, but at least had buttons instead of a rotary dial. I picked up the receiver and tried a number. Am I doing something wrong? There's no dial tone. Huh? Let me see. He took the receiver from my hand and pressed a few buttons. He let out a disappointed sigh. Not again. Those damn rodents keep getting to my cables. I'll go take a look at it. Feel free to make yourself at home. Ah, in case you get thirsty. He fetched me a small bottle of soda from the kitchen, gave it to me, and went into the basement. It seemed like I wouldn't be able to leave quite so soon. Once I held my drink in my hand, I did start to get thirsty. I took a sip and thought about what to do next. So, shall we stay here and wait, or should we take a look around? I think I'm going to stay here and wait. Let's do that. I didn't think he'd be happy with me poking around, especially considering how he felt after I told him about what I saw at Sabrina's house. Not wanting to test his kindness, I waited. Alright, it's all done. I jumped. Sorry, I didn't mean to scare you. No, it's fine. That went faster than I expected. Good thing I decided against snooping around. The phone should be working now. Feel free to give it a try. I'll give you some space. Call me when you're done. He took the bottle I had drunk from earlier and left through the hallway. I had a odd sense of deja vu. I shook it off and started dialing some numbers. They were the same I'd already tried on May's mobile phone. Once again, they failed to connect. How could that be? I was 100% certain that they were correct. I tried all the numbers of friends, family, even work colleagues I could think of until finally... Yes, hello? It was a woman's voice that I didn't recognize. I was certain I had dialed the number of one of my colleagues. Excuse me, isn't this Tom's telephone number? I don't know who that is. Are you another scam caller? Don't call me again. She hung up. Alright, something was definitely wrong here. It might have been best to talk to Frederick and see if he could help me somehow. Maybe he had a clue to how I could get back home. I crept down the hall. He went this way, right? I began to hear some murmuring. A steady chill ran down my back. The sound was coming from the basement. The old floorboard squealed beneath my toes. I saw flickers of a weak light coming from down the steps. I took them as gently as I could, as I held a hand over my mouth to quiet my breath. I reached the bottom and turned the corner. Frederick knelt before a big cage, a small lamp next to him, and held something up to the bars. He hissed to whatever was inside. Yes, you have the scent now, don't you? You must take care of this one tonight. He's curious. He will find the secret much faster than the others. No. We can't have him make something like you too. It's kill or be killed in this town. My stomach dropped out from underneath me as I heard the horrible scraping from inside the cage. I took a step back, bumping into a wall. Before I could react, I had accidentally switched on the main light. The sudden flood of white blinded me for a moment. Once my eyes adjusted, the first thing I saw was it. Frederick was screaming at me, but I could barely think about him. I couldn't look away from that creature. It was cowering inside a dirty cage that seemed to be too small for it. It had features of a dog, but I could also see some elements that were distinctly human-like. Its mouth was way too big, and inside of it was filled with seemingly random set of teeth, or at least something that resembled teeth. Worst of all, though, was the enormous eye staring right back at me. Frederick fumbled with the lock on the cage. My feet finally began to move. I ran out the house and into the streets. All the while, one thought was frantically running through my head. I had to get out. I had to get away from this demented town. With this thought clouding my mind, I hadn't realized I had exited the town already. I was now on a big, grassy plain. Breathing heavily and with fear flooding my mind, I had almost not noticed how heavy my legs had become. Soon I was struggling to stay on my feet and my vision slowly darkened from the exhaustion and panic. I wanted to look back and see how close the monster was, but I was too afraid of seeing it right behind me. I gathered my courage and quickly glanced behind me and, to my surprise, the thing wasn't following me. I didn't know if it had ever followed me in the first place, but it seemed like Frederick wanted to send it after me to kill me. Realizing that I was safe for now, I stopped. My legs were numb and I almost gave in, but I managed to keep standing. I couldn't believe what I'd just seen. It couldn't have been real. Every inch of my body repulsed the idea of such a monster existing. But I'd seen it with my own two eyes. I continued on, at a slower pace this time, and soon came to a small but quickly flowing river. It wasn't a good night to get my clothes wet, but it looked small enough for me to jump over with a running start. I wasn't the athletic type, but I managed to leap over the gap. Suddenly, my feet staggered. A wave of fatigue came over me. It's as if I stepped into a veil. The air had gotten heavier and breathing became more ragged. I clutched my chest to try to figure out what was going on. A throbbing pain pulsed through my back. It was as something had stabbed me. My feet gave in and my vision darkened. I could feel a presence near me. The monster? Frederick? Before I could find out, my consciousness faded. Alright. Now let's do that door one more time. And we're gonna take a look around. Okay, right. It's almost the same options as before. Check the pictures, check the living room, and check the study. So I'm gonna go with check the pictures. I took a look at the pictures hanging in the wall. There weren't too many, but he seemed to be pretty cheerful in all of them, especially the ones with his dog. For some reason, I hadn't seen it around. Nothing else caught my eye. Okay. Let's check the living room. It was only one room over. Surely he wouldn't mind. He said I should feel home after all. The living room was minimalistic and unimpressive. A TV stood in the corner, gathering dust. His bookshelf was well maintained on the other hand. I looked over the books. He seemed pretty interested in biology. I'd love to chat with him about his field sometime once I'd got out of this mess. I chose a random book with a cover and opened it. It seemed to be a handwritten notebook. I quickly shut it to recheck the title. It seemed like I'd pulled out a fantasy book instead of notes from biology. Evolutionary development, intersections between both botany and zoology. Zoology? Zoology. That would be a rather weird name for a fantasy novel, but the depictions on the pages confirmed it being fiction. The pages showed drawings of creatures I'd never seen before, accompanied by detailed graphs and diagrams. I returned the book and went back to the hole. Alright, it's done. I jumped. Sorry, I didn't mean to scare you. No, it's fine. Good thing you didn't catch me snooping around. The phone should be working now. Feel free to give it a try. I'll give you some space. Call me when you're done. So I've got a feeling this is going to be the same situation. Let me try and sketch. Yes. So this is now going to lead to the same outcome, I think, isn't it? Yeah. Okay. So we snooped around, but we didn't snoop around the study. So now let's do that. Okay, so we're going to take a look around. Check the study. Entering Frederick's study felt like I was crossing a line. After all, he had invited me into his home and was trying to help me. But my curiosity overwhelmed me. I was wondering what that thing in Sabrina's basement was, and maybe I could find answers here. I took a look at the table to see what he was working on. I flipped over a picture frame and an open journal grabbed my attention. I decided to sneak a peek at the picture and was surprised to find a photograph of Sabrina and Frederick. They looked older than in the picture I'd seen in Sabrina's place. They depicted them in a park as if they were having a picnic. A canvas was set up nearby. Why was it lying around, face down? Perhaps he didn't... maybe he just hadn't had the time to hang it up yet. I turned my attention to the journal. He was writing... his writing was messy, but I would probably be able to decipher it with some effort. What should I do? Oh, okay, this is different. Right, we're going to take the book. Normally I wouldn't steal, but this couldn't be further from a normal situation. I had no idea when he'd come back and how much time I had to read it. As I picked up the book, something fell out. I was startled by the sound and froze. Slowly, I picked it up curiously and took a look at it. It was a small key, possibly for a mailbox or a drawer. While wondering about where the key could fit, I heard approaching footsteps. My heartbeat accelerated. In a panic, I hastily put the key in the notebook in my pockets whilst quickly exiting the room. Alright, it's done. I jumped. Sorry, I didn't mean to scare you. No, it's fine. Good thing you didn't catch me snooping around. The phone should be working now. Feel free to give it a try. I'll give you some space. Call me when you're done. To a wall. Before I could react, I had accidentally switched on the main light. The sudden flood of white blinded me for a moment. Once my eyes adjusted, the first thing I saw was it. Frederick was screaming at me, but I could barely think about him. I couldn't look away from that creature. It was cowering inside a dirty cage that seemed to be too small for it. It had features of a dog, but I could also see some elements that were distinctly human-like. Its mouth was way too big. and inside of it was filled with seemingly random set of teeth, or at least something that resembled teeth. Worst of all, though, were the enormous eyes staring right back at me. Frederick fumbled with the lock on the cage. My feet finally began to move. I ran out of the house and into the streets. All while one thought was frantically running through my head. I had to get out. I had to get away from this demented town. With this thought clouding my mind, I hadn't realised that I had exited town already. I was now on a big grassy plain. Breathing heavily and with fear flooding my mind, I'd almost not noticed how heavy my legs had become. Soon I was struggling to stay on my feet, and my vision slowly darkened from exhaustion and panic. I wanted to look back and see how close the monster was, but I was too afraid of seeing it right behind me. I gathered my courage and quickly glanced behind me, and to my surprise, the thing wasn't following me. I didn't know if it had followed me in the first place, but it seemed like Frederick wanted to send it to me to kill me. Realizing that I was safe for now, I stopped. My legs were numb and almost gave in, but I managed to keep standing. I couldn't believe what I had just seen. It couldn't have been real. Every inch of my body repulsed the idea of such a monster existing, but I had seen it with my own 2 eyes. I needed to rest, but stopping could be risky. Okay, so this is different now. Take a break here. I really should take a quick break to make sure that I wouldn't collapse along the way. So I sat down for a bit and kept looking out for the monster. After catching my breath, I suddenly remembered the journal. Maybe this would be a good time to take another peek inside. Read it. A small peek wouldn't hurt. I might find some clues as to what that thing was. I opened it to the very beginning and began to read. I've discovered the cause of the pet disappearances. No one was stealing them or killing them, they just changed. I installed a GPS chip into my own dog and followed it around to see what was going on. Eventually, I found it eating one of those odd-looking plants. I tried to stop it, but it growled at me. Never I had seen it act that way before. There was nothing I could do but let it finish. I took one of those plants with me to study it. Not too long after, I noticed that my dog had changed. It was a bit bigger and its hair was falling out in great quantities. It also started to bark at me, seemingly for no reason. I tried a bit of the plant myself, hoping to see why it was drawn to it, but I found the taste nearly unbearable. I set the journal down. I thought I just heard a sound. I jerked my head around me to find the source. There was nothing. Maybe it was just my imagination, or maybe it was time to keep moving. I'm going to keep on reading, I think. I woke the next day to a piercing pain in my right arm. At first I was horrified to find it was entirely bent out of shape, but something inside me suppressed my fear. I calmly stood to fix it. At first I thought about getting rid of it, but the pain had already subsided. I was able to flatten it by beating it with a hammer. I had lost all feeling in the limb by that point. What would people think if I went out with a bent arm? I began to look for my dog. The first thing I found were large animal footprints, much too large for its paws. The kitchen had been torn apart and strange hair littered the whole house. Then I found it, or at least something that was once my dog. I could still see the resemblance, but most of its hair had fallen out and its jaw was dislocated. It began to growl as soon as it saw me. Shortly after, it jumped on me with no provocation. It was hard to keep it off with just one hand, but its teeth had fallen out, making it nearly harmless. I managed to knock it out and lock it up in the basement. No, I definitely heard something. I felt uneasy about this, but I didn't want to stop reading. I felt so close to figuring out something crucial. Okay, we're going to continue reading on here. A little more couldn't hurt. I couldn't see any sign of the monster anywhere. I should be fine. Alright, where was I? I froze up. There was definitely something near me. And it was close. Way too close. I could almost feel its ragged breath on my skin. My heart was starting to race. My chest contracted to the point where I had difficulties breathing. I started to... okay, right, let's try that again then. So, where are we going here? So, we shall continue... Shall we continue? No, you know what? So I take a break. Take a break. Read it. Continue reading. And then stop. It was way too risky. I should keep moving. Hell knows what that monster would do if it found me. I continued on at a slower pace this time and soon came to a small but quickly flowing river. It wasn't a good night to get my clothes wet, but it looked small enough for me to jump over with a running start. I wasn't the athletic type, but I managed to leap over the gap. suddenly my feet staggered. We're going to have the same section again, aren't we? Yeah, it's the same. But we got a key! We got the key! We got a secret! Excellent. We got a key. But we didn't get the key from the second room then. That's interesting. Welcome back, everyone. If you're not noticed, I've had a haircut. We've done that, door 1 and door 2, or at least mostly done 1 and 2. There was a few little things we didn't do. Certainly getting the key in door 2. So I think now is a perfect time to start the third door. Would you agree? With the hands. Oh, Christ. Oh, no. That doesn't look good. Trapped. Oh, Christ. Okay, what are we getting ourselves in for? It's no good. Okay. I shot awake, panting heavily, my clothes sticking to my skin due to all of the sweat. My eyes darted around the room, but everything was quiet. I seemed to be safe. A nightmare. Seems like I just had a nightmare. I was chased by some kind of animal or monster, and there was some eerie plant. I had forgotten most of the dream, but I knew it must have been terrifying. The pulsing pain in my head slowly subsided. I took deep breaths and kept mumbling to myself that it had all been a dream, nothing more. After calming down, I decided to take another look around the house. The fact that no one was here, even though the lights were on, was still nagging at the back of my mind. But what I saw when I opened the bedroom door was not what I had expected. Instead of the living room I'd entered the bedroom through, I found myself in the middle of a long hallway. Ooh, this is different. A row of doors interspersed with handrails covered each wall. I could hear people chatting in the distance. Where was I? And how did I get here? This place looked like a hotel at first glance. A plate with a room number was hanging next to all the doors. Mine was 215. As I moved towards the end of the hallway, I took a more thorough look at my surroundings. The floor was lined with a red carpet featuring an elaborate design. The red and white walls complemented the elegant atmosphere. On the ceiling hung electrical lamps that were similar in design to candles. As I stepped out of the hallway, I was momentarily blinded by the bright ambience. A huge chandelier was hanging on the ceiling of the grand hall I had stepped into. I seemed to be on an upper floor of this 2-floor structure. The ground floor, apparently a restaurant area, was lined with tables. Multiple people were dining and happily chatting with each other. A huge window across from me showed a big body of water. I was in a hotel by the beach. The water looked oddly close. I needed answers. Quickly, I located the stairs and hurried down towards the restaurant. Luckily, one of the waiters was just passing by as I reached the bottom. "Excuse me, can you tell me where I am?" He answered without hesitation. "You're in the restaurant area, sir. If you'd like to order something, you need to..." No, I mean this whole hotel." This time he did hesitate. "Well, you're on a Keshaminth cruise ship, if that's what you mean. Is everything in order?" "Cruise ship? How did I get on a cruise ship? Had I been kidnapped? Would my kidnappers let me walk around freely?" The waiter had a concerned look on his face. He glanced over at his colleague, who had gestured to him with a stern expression on her face. "I could call someone over to help you. Or you could find someone at the help desk just at the end of the hallway." He gestured back up the stairs and pointed at another hallway next to the one I had come out of. "Thank you. I'll just ask for more information at the help desk." I didn't want to hold him up any longer. The waiter's colleague had by now crossed her arms in front of her chest and was tapping her foot impatiently. The waiter hesitantly nodded and turned away from me. A cruise ship? I don't remember ever booking a ticket for a cruise. But as I rummaged through my pockets, I did find a keycard with the number 215 on it. Right, the help desk. I should be able to find out more there. I made my way back up the stairs. The room at the ends of the second hallway looked like a lounge area. It was filled with comfortable sofas and armchairs. Multiple groups of people were chatting to each other. I could see children playing near what I assumed to be the help desk. I quickly approached the man standing at the desk, who perked up from the documents he was browsing. "Hi, how can I help you?" "I'm a bit lost. Well, I don't really remember booking a cruise. Is there a way to get off it early?" He looked at me with a similarly puzzled expression as the waiter. Could you tell me the room number? Yes, it's 215, but I don't really remember booking it. I took out my keycard and showed it to him. The man opened the drawer and started expertly flipping through the folders. Shortly after, he pulled out a document. Is this your name and signature? He turned it so that I could see it. To my surprise, the name and the signature written on it were indeed mine. But how? How could I forget signing up for a cruise? As for your second question, we're currently on the last day of our trip. The ship will arrive at the Keshaminth port tomorrow at noon. Are you here with anyone? He threw a skeptical look my way. I must have sounded like a weirdo. No, I'm alone. I'll just sort things out tomorrow then. The employee shrugged and put the folder back in the drawer. Don't hesitate to let me know if you need any more help. I turned around, wondering what my next course of action should be when... Ow! Something had hit one of my legs hard. I stumbled but managed to stop my fall by holding onto the help desk. Oh God, are you okay? Lanny, you need to pay more attention. I looked up to see what had hit me. Initially, I had assumed that I'd walked into some piece of furniture, but that wasn't the case. A boy was sitting on the ground in front of me. Someone was standing over him, making sure that he was all right. As soon as she had confirmed that he wasn't hurt, she turned to me. I'm so very sorry about that. Are you hurt anywhere? Lanny, make sure to apologize. Sorry, I wasn't looking. No, it's alright, I'm okay. I turned to the boy named Lanny. Are you okay? Yeah, it's nothing. His look was fixed to the ground. It seemed like he really did feel bad about bumping into me. The woman had in the meanwhile fixed her gaze onto my face. Are you sure you're alright? You look rather pale. No, I'm fine. That didn't seem to convince her. My confusion and frustration about being on this boat had shown on my face. Would you like to sit down with us for a bit? I have some medicine against seasickness. It might help. Now that she was mentioning it, I was feeling a bit woozy. I had been too preoccupied with figuring out what was going on to notice. She led me to one of the sofas and motioned me to sit down. My name is Sabrina, by the way. This boy here is Lanny, and the girl over there is Amy. So I didn't want to say anything just in case, but yet these are the three characters that we've met before. So the two kids, Lanny and Amy, we've technically met Sabrina 3 times, I think, as well. Well, we suspect we have met Sabrina for the 3rd time, because in the second story, she had the face thing going on. But it's quite interesting because in neither of the stories until this one, these 3 characters have not met each other, if I'm not mistaken. Obviously, I know Amy and Lanny have met each other, but I'm talking about Amy, Lanny, and Sabrina. So, interesting, yes. The plot thickens, indeed. She motioned to a girl sitting at a table nearby who was brooding over a piece of paper. My name is Scott, so are they your family? Sabrina stopped rummaging through her handbag and looked at me with an amused smile on her face. Oh no, they're my neighbour's kids. We're good friends and I paint with their children sometimes. Okay, so again, so they've got the same relationship then. Certainly from the first story. Possibly the second. I'm currently looking after them. While Sabrina was still looking for the medicine, Lanny approached his sister and peered over her shoulder. He then grimaced and walked over to our sofa to take a seat next to Sabrina. Here you go. She handed me a pill from a small bottle. Out of the corner of my eyes, I saw Lanny motion to Amy. I don't get how she can be so into drawing. It's boring. She's been at it for at least half an hour and it still looks terrible. Hey, I heard that. Amy shot an angry gaze at Lanny. Good art needs time. Maybe you should work on some art as well. Yeah, maybe it'd help with your hyperactivity. I'm not hyperactive, I'm just healthy. That's what Dad says. I guess so. If I had any ounce of knowledge about music, I could help you relieve your energy that way at least. Though it's been a while since my art... Sabrina trailed off with a sad look on her face. Don't worry, it's okay. I've been figuring things out on my own. Also, I've been asking Dad and Mom to see if they can buy me a melodica. I'm pretty sure that I'll get one soon. You two really seem to have a knack for art and music. Your parents must be proud of you. I don't know about Amy, but I'm sure they're proud of me. Amy shot another angry glance at Lanny's way, but didn't retort. She seems to be the mature one of their sibling relationship. Hey, do you have any more of those pills? I jumped slightly. A voice had called out from right behind me. As I turned round, I saw a grumpy-looking man. Sabrina grabbed her handbag once again. Another one, Frederick? It says on the package that one should be enough. Here we go. Here is Frederick Steiner. So he's been in all 3 stories as well. Apparently not. I can't work whilst feeling like crap. Why did I agree to go on this trip? Sabrina gave him a skeptical look, but handed him a pill without saying anything. Frederick turned around on the spot and trotted off. Sabrina sighed. Sorry about that. He's usually more pleasant. The seasickness must be getting to him. That, coupled with an upcoming deadline for an article. So he's a journalist? No, that's not what I meant. He's a biologist and he's been working hard on getting something published in that one magazine. If you ask me, his obsession with getting more publications is a bit unhealthy. A fellow scientist? Now that I thought about it, I hadn't written anything in a while myself. Way more pressing matters that had taken up my time recently. The spores were still... I jolted up. Sabrina looked at me in surprise. Thank you for the medicine. I feel better now. I should get going though. I was too anxious to sit still, even though I knew that there was nothing I could do until the ship came to port the next day. Alright, take care. Feel free to let me know if you need any more medicine. I thanked her again, said goodbye to the siblings and headed back towards the sleeping quarters. But I stopped just before the hallway that led to my room. My eyes wandered towards the big window. The sun had started to set, but I didn't feel tired at all. Likely because I'd just woken up recently. And so I decided that the best way to dispel some of my anxiety was to take in some fresh air. I continued on past the hallway and out onto the deck. A salty breeze hit my face. I could hear the soft splashing of waves against the hull of the ship. This place was way emptier than I had expected. Less than a handful of couples and some families were standing near the edge of the railing. One of those couples had their dog with them. Every now and then, when I heard the call of the seagull, it jerked its head around. Were one of the pairs on this deck perhaps Amy and Lanny's parents? Absent-mindedly, I approached the railing right by the door and looked over. We were very high up. Looking down at the waves hitting the ship hull had an eerie hypnotic effect. Combined with the cool air and the sound of water, it calmed me down. Hey! I jerked up. Someone was standing at the railing next to me. Sorry, I didn't mean to surprise you. No worries, it's okay. It looked like she had been standing there for a while. Did I somehow overlook her? You looked a bit confused, so I wanted to ask if you were alright. Oh, well, I guess I'm a bit lost. I had a feeling she'd be no more understanding than the employees, so I decided to not tell her too much. I'm a bit lost too. It might sound weird, but I'm not sure how I ended up here. Wait, that sounded oddly familiar to my situation, but she seemed to misinterpret my surprised look. I know, it sounds odd. It's just like in my dreams. Whenever you try to remember how you got to the place you were dreaming about, you can't. So I wasn't the only one. There was someone else here who was experiencing the same thing I was. Knowing this lifted my spirits. Just as I was about to tell her about my situation, she suddenly perked up. Sorry, I should go. I promised to meet someone. And with that, she hurried off before I could say anything. I was slightly frustrated by the fact that I hadn't been able to confide in her. But I could seek her out tomorrow, I guess. The sun had meanwhile almost set. The blood-red stripe was visible on the horizon. I set off back towards my room. With nothing better to do, I got into bed and tried to sleep. My night was restless. Half the time I wasn't sure if I was awake or asleep. Weird sounds kept waking me up. By the time the sun had risen, I felt like I'd barely slept at all. Today would be the day we'd arrive at a place called Kejaminth. From there, I would be able to get back home one way or the other. I rubbed my eyes as I opened the door that led into the hallway, but something was wrong. The hallway looked different. Was it shorter? There definitely used to be more doors here. It was as if a new wall-ad door had appeared where the hallway originally continued to the restaurant area. I approached the new door and tried to turn the doorknob, but it was locked. Slowly panic set in. Was I trapped in here? Did everyone else already leave? There was no way they had left me behind, right? I quickly approached one of the doors in the hallway and knocked. Silence. I tried the next and then the third. All was silent. My heart rate accelerated. I forced myself to calm down and think this through. There was no way they could leave the passenger behind. And even if they did, they would notice sooner or later that I was still in here. The most productive thing I could do right now would be checking if the other rooms were open. Maybe I could find a way to make people aware of the fact that I was still in here. I considered which door to try first. Here we go. Room 1, 2, 3, or 4. I'm gonna choose door 3. Let's go with door 3. Let's do it. I entered the dimly lit room. It was desolate except for a few cans of food and a few water bottles in one of the corners. There were also 2 rather young children, one boy and one girl, in the middle of the room. As I saw the girl kneeling over the boy's motionless body, my heart dropped. It was Amy and Lanny. She looked up at me with pleading eyes as I rushed to their side. Lanny was covered in sweat, indicated a heavy fever. His limbs were heavily bruised, and he was heaving. I glanced over at Amy. Fortunately, she seemed to be alright. I'm Scott. We met yesterday. You're Amy, right? Yeah. Her voice was shaking. Lanny is sick. Don't worry, Amy. We'll find a way to help him. She hesitantly nodded. That seemed to calm her down a bit. I unfortunately didn't have any medicine on me, so I didn't have any way to help them yet. You seem to have some food and water here. Do you think I could take some of it with me? Just in case there are more people in this building that need it. I don't mind. Thank you. She didn't seem very talkative, but that was to be expected considering how concerned about her brother she must be. I'll let you know once I find something that can help you, okay? Okay. She turned back towards her brother. I walked by the canned food and considered taking some with me. Oh, God. No! I mean, Amy seems okay with us taking it. I'm not going to take all of it, because that's the wrong thing to do. But I think we should take half. I think we should take half. That leaves some for them and some for us, right? I decided to take part of it with me. That way they would still have some left. I left the room and found myself back in the hallway. Okay, right. I'm assuming going into room 3 again won't do anything. I was worried about those two. All kinds of terrible scenarios that popped into my head. I glanced around the room. They fortunately seemed to be to still be more or less okay. I approached them. Amy was still huddled over Lanny's body. Her face was twisted with worry. His condition seemed to have worsened, which became more and more apparent as I got closer. Spots on his arms and limbs seemed to be bruised. Some kind of black ulcers similar to buds growing out of some of them. I was sure he wouldn't last much longer without medicine. Amy looked up at me with sad eyes. I unfortunately didn't have any medicine on me, so I didn't have any way to help them yet. I should get going again. I'll come back soon to check on you. Okay, please don't take so long this time. Long? I hadn't been out for that long, but it was understandable that she didn't want to be left all alone. She was likely exaggerating. I walked by the canned food and considered taking some with me. No. I won't take any. I decided against taking any. I left the room and found myself back in the hallway. Okay, so time has passed after going into that room, so it's not repeating itself. Okay. We've got to be careful here, don't we? I'm going to go to room 2. The door creaked open and light spilled into the damp room. A crowd of about 40 people occupied the space. Some were sitting on the floor and some were leaning against the dirty walls. Suddenly, someone near the door darted up and shoved me aside. It was Frederick, who had met only briefly whilst chatting with Sabrina. He tried to force himself through the door, but was stopped mid-air. An invisible force was pushing him back. Some more people approached the door and tried the same, but to no avail. Damn it! Frederick slammed his fist onto the wall. I thought this was my chance. Frustrated, he went back to where he was originally sitting. I turned back towards the door. A slow creeping panic set in. Was I trapped in here as well? Oh shit. I hastily tried to walk out of the room and succeeded. Relieved, I went back inside. Wait, you can leave the room? Frederick shot up and walked up to me until he was way too close for comfort. We need food. You'll get some for us, right? That sounded more like a threat than a request. Yeah, I can do that if I find some. I stepped back so I didn't have the smell of his sour sweat anymore. Do you happen to have anything here that you don't need? Just in case other people trapped on this ship need anything specific? He looked at me as if I'd just made a joke. What? No. Even if we had anything, we wouldn't just be giving it away. I looked at him skeptically. Alright, I know what you want. I have a gun with me. If you bring me food, I'll trade it for the gun. Oh, God, okay. A gun? I'd never used a firearm before, and I wasn't sure how a gun would help me in this situation. Hesitantly, I agreed to escape Frederick's impatient gaze. Maybe it would come in handy after all. But you'll have to make sure to share the food with the others. Alright, whatever. Just give us something, alright? I do have food on me. Maybe I could trade it for the weapon in case I run into something dangerous. Oh, Christ. Okay. Well, I mean, yeah, I suppose this makes sense. But I don't know how I feel about having a gun on me, but sure. Let's go with yes. I decided to give the food to Frederick. It was probably a good idea to have a weapon with me in case I run into something out there. I have some food with me. I can give it to you if you can share it with the others. Frederick took a quick look around as if to make sure no one was watching. Then he took a gun from his pocket. Here, take it quickly. Don't tell anyone you gave me this, okay? I was definitely not okay with keeping the food a secret and was about to protest, but he'd already taken the food and shoved me out the door into the hallway. He threw the gun at my feet and slammed the door shut. What a jerk, I thought. Well, at least I had a gun now. I'd never really used one before, but I'd seen my fair share of crime movies, so I was certain that it would work somehow. How hard could shooting a gun be, right? I checked the magazine to see how many bullets were in it. It was empty. Of course it was empty. I was about to say it as well. That's why he had handed it over so easily. Otherwise he could have threatened me with it instead of trading it in. How could I have been fooled so easily? Frustrated, I put it away and turned towards the other doors. Okay. Well, there's no point in going into room 3 at the moment because we haven't got any medicine. Let's go to room 4. The room seemed to be empty except for a lonely light bulb hanging from the ceiling. It didn't seem to be working properly as it barely gave off any light and flickered every now and then. It took my eyes a while to get adjusted to the darkness, and right as they did, I realised that the room wasn't actually as empty as I thought. A huge dog I hadn't seen right away because of this poor lighting was just a few feet in front of me, and it was determined to rip me to pieces. I hastily stumbled backwards, almost tripping. This was it, I thought. I was going to get mauled. But nothing happened. All I could hear was the rattling of a chain. I slowly opened my eyes and saw that the dog was forcibly chained to the wall as per its red collar. It was vehemently struggling to get free. After confirming that there was indeed no risk of it getting free, I took a closer look around the room. There were small, glittering objects strewn across the ground next to the animal. Next to the dog was a body, a badly mutilated one. A foul feeling spread through my stomach. Did the dog do this? The corpse was lying too close to the dog to examine it. Instead, I cautiously inched closer to the object scattered on the ground next to it. I picked one up and examined it. It was a bullet. I had a gun with me. If these bullets fit the model, then I would be able to use it. When I took a closer look around the area behind the dog, I saw that there was an opening in the wall. It seemed to lead into another section of the ship. This was the first time since getting trapped here that I'd seen a possible escape route. The only problem was the furious animal blocking it. I had a gun and there were bullets next to the dog. Attack the dog using the gun? Oh, Christ. I mean, I've just got this feeling that if we were to do that, we would try to escape the ship, right? But we've got Amy and Lanny to also try to look after. So this is a proper dilemma now. Do we be selfish and try to escape, or do we try to help? Pretty much the only two characters in the entire series so far that have actually always consistently been nice. And for that reason, I'm going to say no to attacking this dog, because I want to help our friendos. Amy and Lanny have always been good to us so far. They're pretty much the only glimmer of light in this game so far. So I'm going to say no. I'm going to regret this decision, but I'm going to say no. This might be a bad idea. I didn't feel too enthusiastic about the prospect of killing an animal. Also, I've never handled a gun before. Maybe I could find another way to get past it. I couldn't think of a way to get round the dog without getting mauled, and so I decided to retreat for now and look for a way to get past it without getting myself in danger. Suddenly I felt the floor beneath me vibrate with increasing intensity. What was happening? An earthquake? The intensity of the rumbling increased and soon I was thrown from side to side. I struggled to stabilise myself and ultimately failed. My back hit the wall hard and I fell to the ground. I rolled into a ball, trying to protect my head, and I slid along the floor. The sound of metal breaking apart filled my ears. It was deafening. And then it just stopped as suddenly as I started. I stayed in the fetal position for a while longer, fearing that everything would start shaking again. but it seemed like it was finally over. Were the people inside the rooms all right? Had we perhaps run ashore? Would someone come and rescue us now that we were on land? A myriad of questions filled my mind. My eyes fell on the locked door to the hallway. Something about it was off. It was barely noticeable, but it seemed like the door was slightly skewed. I quickly approached it and turned the doorknob and pulled on it. It was still stuck, but it did feel like I would be able to pry it open with more force. And so I tugged again and again, each time the door inching more and more open until the door flew open and I was thrown back. A strong gust of wind hit my face. I reflexively closed my eyes. I celebrated internally. Finally, I'd be able to get out of here and look for help. Finally, this nightmare would end. But I was mistaken. What I expected to see beyond the door was the hall and the restaurant from the day before. But my expectations were utterly betrayed. The ocean. A huge body of water was in the distance. As I looked down, I saw that we were hundreds of meters above ground. How were we moving on land? What shocked me the most is that I could make out a thin, long leg supporting this ship. Their movements were smooth, like I felt like we were floating. It's as if I was inside something that was alive. My eyes wandered across the rest of the ship below me. It must have broken in half. The form of the tear was quite odd though. It looked like a huge bite mark. As if something bigger than this cruise ship had ripped into it. But that couldn't be true. There was no animal big enough that could have bitten off such a huge chunk of the ship. As the creature I was on made a sharp turn, the ocean drifted out of view. My grip on the doorframe tightened. I feared I'd get thrown off. Then it stopped. My eyes widened in shock as I saw the scene before me. The view was surreal. Oh no. Okay. One single town was standing in the middle of a wasteland. Wandering through that wasteland were enormous, outlandish creatures amongst gigantic mushrooms. They looked like something straight out of a nightmare. I wiped my eyes, trying to dispel the illusion before me, but it wouldn't go away. My breathing became ragged and my chest contracted painfully. I had to accept this as my reality. In a trance, I stepped away from the doorframe. A wave of rage overcame me as I lashed out and kicked the wall. A dull pain spread throughout my foot, but I barely noticed it. Tears started to well up in my eyes. Was there even any reason for me to go on? Why shouldn't I just go back to my room, lie in bed and stay there? I leaned against the wall and stared at the ceiling. My feet were shaking, but I was finally starting to calm down. I knew that getting angry wouldn't help. What I was seeing wasn't logical in any way. It went against everything I knew. I was a scientist, so not being able to understand this place frustrated me. Above all, it scared me. But giving up wasn't the right thing to do. It wasn't a logical choice if I really wanted this nightmare to end. I'd escape sooner or later and get myself into a better position eventually. That's what I hoped, at least. This ship may still be suspended high above ground, but there must be some way to get down. I would figure out what to do next once I was out of here. I closed the door and slowly let my eyes drift over the 4 doors in front of me. Back to the 4 doors. Okay. Well, we still haven't got any medicine yet. There's not even been a hint of medicine. I mean, let's go to door 1. I mean, hopefully we'll find some medicine, but I honestly don't know. The room was unfurnished and windowless. A sole light bulb in the middle of the ceiling illuminated it faintly. I could see about 15 people sitting on the dirty ground. Most of them seemed to be adults, but there were a couple of children cowering next to what I assumed to be their parents. One person from the group, an old man, raised his head as if walking from a dream. The door, it's open! More and more people lifted their heads and I could feel their stares piercing me. The man was the first to stand up and shuffle towards the door. I stepped aside, but as he tried to cross the threshold he suddenly stopped. He was frozen in mid-air. His fingers tightened as if he was exerting great effort. Disappointed, he stepped back. It's no use. He sulked back to his spot and slumped to the floor. The other people in the room lowered their heads, their hopes dashed in an instant. I wasn't sure what was going on, but it was evident that they were in trouble. I quickly walked up to the older man. Hey, do you know what's going on here? No, We all woke up in this room and were unable to leave. And now it seems like you're stuck here with us as well. I somehow am unable to get through these doors while the people on the other side can't. The man stared with me with wide eyes. This means that you, instead of the girl, might be able to help us. Right after he uttered those words, some of the people in the room lifted their heads and looked at me. Some with a look of disbelief and some with hope in their eyes. So there was someone else on this ship who could enter and exit this room freely? What did she look like? He started explaining. I soon realised that this description fit someone I knew. It sounded just like the girl I'd met on the deck yesterday, so she got onto this mess as well. We asked her to help us, but she just laughed and left. She's got a sinister side to her, hasn't she? I don't know what her name is now. But yeah, May. I remember her name now, May. That wasn't quite how I remembered her, but it wasn't like I'd known her for a long time. It was her nice appearance, just an act. I shifted my attention back to the man before me. There are more people trapped behind other doors. Please let me know if you have anything that you don't need or if you are in need of something. That way I can make sure that everyone gets out of here safely. Some people nodded in agreement, with the majority stayed stoic. A woman stood up, got something from a shelf and approached me. We found some medicine in this room. We can't give away all of it, but maybe it will help someone. The label was barely legible. I could make out the letters Fun-ite. I still gladly took the bottle and thanked her as she trotted back. Please, if you find any food, bring it to us. Alright, I should head out, but I'll let you know if I find anything. With these words, I stepped back through the door. It closed behind me as if a wind gust had suddenly blown through the hallway. I mean, we're now definitely going into room number 3, aren't we? I quickly made my way towards the middle of the room to find out whether the boy's condition had improved. I could already tell from a distance that even more wounds had opened up. On top of that, it was as if some mushroom-like plants were sprouted out of them. Amy didn't look well either. She was just sitting there next to him, staring into space. It was as if she hadn't noticed me coming in. Hey Amy, are you alright? Her head barely moved in my direction. Scott? It was almost as if she didn't really recognise me. I grew concerned. Yeah, it's me, Scott. Are you alright? She didn't reply. Maybe she was just tired. I couldn't blame her. The whole situation was pretty exhausting. Especially for someone as young as her. Where have you been? Her voice was almost inaudible. I was searching for a way out of here. Don't worry, I'm sure I'll find one soon. She continued to stare at the floor with a blank expression. I just need some more time. I'll have you and your brother out of here soon. She turned away. It didn't seem like she was up for a conversation. It was probably in her interest that I left and continued searching for an exit. I left her be. Oh, so we can't give the medicine to them? Are we too late? Not good. I want to go back in. Oh shit. The door wouldn't budge at first. How could it get stuck? It was totally fine the last time I tried to enter it. I started pulling on it with all my might. Eventually I was able to pry it open. What had blocked my attempt to enter the room were vines and mushrooms growing on the ground. Where had they come from? My question was quickly answered as I pushed through them. Lanny's body seemed to be floating in the middle of the room, but I quickly realised that it was just being supported by some of the vines. It looked like they'd sprouted out of him. How is this possible? Where was Amy? I couldn't see her anywhere. Amy, are you in here? Are you alright? No reply. She had to be. There was no way she could. My eyes darted around in panic until I finally spotted her. It was Amy, but my heart sank into my stomach. There had been no way to escape the expanse of the vines, and so she must have been entangled under them, and then something wet slid down my cheek, but I barely noticed it. I hadn't known them for that long, but I still felt responsible. I was their chance to escape this hell, but I had let them down. Shaking my head in disbelief, I stumbled backwards out of the room. The door fell shut in front of me. The horrible scene had burned itself into my mind. I was on the verge of losing hope, but I steadied myself and turned away from the door. Even if I wasn't able to help to save Amy and Lanny anymore, I might be able to help other people trapped in here. I shouldn't give up just yet. I had to postpone mourning their death until later. With a heavy heart, I went back into the middle of the hallway. I mean, we haven't got any more food. I suppose it's just the dog now, isn't it? Right, okay, let's try to use the gun on the dog. Because again, the reputation out there is that I murder dogs, I kill dogs, and I kick dogs, and I'm not good with dogs. So let's just continue that trend and shoot a dog, shall we? Fucking hell. Why is his reputation here? As it entered the room, the dog instantly started barking and tugging on its chain. The hole in the wall behind it seemed to be the only way out of this part of the ship. Once again, I went through the options to see what I could do to get past it. I had a gun and there were bullets next to the dog. We're going to have to attack the dog this time around, I'm sorry to say. Sorry to any dog lovers. I quickly snatched up some of the bullets that were lying near the dog and loaded the gun. It felt rather heavy in my hands as I pointed it at the creature. The dog had stopped barking and was glaring at me with mad eyes. It was as if it knew the object my hands was for. My breath was getting heavier. My heartbeat accelerated. My finger twitched and... Suddenly, silence engulfed me. It was soon replaced by a high-pitched sound. I had instinctively closed my eyes. I slowly opened them. A red puddle started tainting the area around the dog's corpse. I looked at the gun in my hands and a wave of disgust engulfed me. I forcefully threw it in the corner of the room. Immediately I had started regretting what I had done to the animal. Cautiously, I stepped closer and watched it. I wanted to confirm whether it was really dead. Its body lay on the ground, motionless. It was truly dead, without a doubt. I stepped over it and walked towards the hole in the wall. What I had done weighed heavily on my conscience. The hole was rather small, and I had trouble fitting through, but I succeeded eventually. After a while, I'd noticed something was off. The hole seemed to go on for longer than it should. I expected to have already come out of another part of the ship, but it just went on and on. Then a sudden wave of fatigue came over me. It was as if I had stepped into a veil. The air had gotten heavier, and my breathing became more ragged. I clutched my chest, and I tried to figure out what was going on. A throbbing pain pulsed through my arm. It was as if something had stabbed me. I tried to turn round, but I had already become too weak. My feet gave in, and my vision darkened. I could feel a presence near me. Before I could find out who it was, my conscience just faded. And that's how we end the third door for now. But we're going to go straight back in, my friends, and try that again. But we have now officially attempted all three doors. But we've got a lot of work to do on that third door. Ooh. Okay, that's weird. That set us here. Oh. What's this? Oh, this is different. I wasn't expecting this. How many times does this make now? Never thought this presence would make such a huge difference. Seems like his use is nearing its end. No need to keep him around then. I wonder how long it'll take until I find another one. Letting it end like this would be quite boring though. And he did interact with her quite a lot. Maybe I should do one last experiment. I'll send him off with a bang. He deserves it for helping me so much. Alright, time to go make preparations. Oh, here we go. Oh, what was... My head felt like it was splitting open. What was I doing? I had seen something. A nightmare? No, it had been real, hadn't it? The pain was nearly unbearable. Images that seemed to have no relation to each other flashed through my mind. A plant, a dark room full of people, distorted faces, an ocean, 2 children, a blood trail, a pack of cats, a knife, pain. My head felt as if it was going to burst, and then... It was over. The pain was gone. I steadied myself. The images I had seen, were they hallucinations? Or were they memories? My mind was all jumbled up. I called out as I left the bedroom, but no one answered. I approached the front door. My hand touched the cold doorknob. Sweat started to form on my arm. Was I afraid? Of what? I swallowed hard. My hand finally moved and I turned the doorknob. As I stepped outside, I noticed everything looked normal. So I'm trying to set the scene here. So this looks a bit like the second door, I think. My breathing slowed. I hadn't noticed how tense my body had become. I stepped into a narrow alleyway that seemed to be leading into a busier part of the town. It was bristling with life. Something about the people walking by was off, but it was hard to put a finger on it. I was too far away. I decided to avoid the main street for now and instead went in the other direction. My instincts told me that was the right thing to do. Right as I turned into another alleyway, I saw something from the corner of my eyes. This is different. Had someone just entered one of those buildings? I hadn't turned my head quick enough. This brilliantly white structure seemed to be out of place amongst the grey houses that were lining the street. As I trotted closer, I noticed that it looked awfully familiar to the lab I had worked in. No, it was the lab. What was it doing here? I stood in front of it for a while, dumbfounded, but there was no mistaking it. This was my lab. The easiest way to make sure I was entering it. The interior looked exactly as like I remembered it. No one was at the reception, meaning no one to manually open the door, but I fortunately still knew the passcode. I made my way upstairs and walked towards section M. On the way, I tried to keep my eyes and ears peeled in case one of my colleagues was around, but the place seemed to be totally deserted. That wasn't the only thing that was bothering me, though. Everything was oddly clean. Most people would likely not think that it was something to be concerned about. The problem was that there was no way someone had been able to find the time to tidy up the lab. Not only had we lost a big part of our staff, no one was in the right mood to bother with keeping things clean. As I was contemplating what this might mean, I finally reached my destination, my office. The door was slightly ajar. Did someone break in? I cautiously opened it. The room was empty. My desk was gone. My file cabinets were gone. Even the wallpaper was gone. What happened here? The only thing present was a single sheet of paper in the middle of the room. I hesitantly walked towards it. The door behind me suddenly slammed shut and I jerked around. Was it the wind? Or did someone slam it shut? But there was no door. I stood there in disbelief. Then I slowly turned around and looked back at the sheet of paper on the ground. My hands began to shake. The closer I got to the piece of paper, the worse their trembling became. I hesitantly let my eyes wander over the red writing. Thank you for participating in my experiments. Oh. Was that Amy or May? I swear that was Amy. And May was in the background there. Or maybe it was the other way around. And we got the end credit scene for the first time. There's Alfred Prose. Huge thank you to Alfred Prose for joining us last week. And of course, for Tim for joining us for both weeks. But we got our first credit scene, guys. We're definitely going to continue this. This can't be over. This can't be how it ends, man. Congratulations on finishing Mycorrhiza. I sincerely hope that you've enjoyed the experience. I certainly have. Tim and co. Definitely want to continue playing it though. So before you are sent to the title screen, there are a few things that you should know. One, on the title screen, you'll notice a new menu called Extra. In said menu, you will have the option to replay the intro and outro. 2. We have done our best to make Mycorrhiza as bug-free, typo-free, and enjoyable as possible, but you might still encounter some bugs or have some suggestions on how to improve the game. If you do, then please don't hesitate to fill in our feedback form. You can also find the form in our itch.io page. 3. Feel free to check out our devlogs for behind-the-scenes information. There's also a link to the free soundtrack on the itch.io page. If anything new Mycorrhiza related happens, you'll hear about it on our Twitter. Feel free to tweet at us if you create anything Mycorrhiza related, like Let's Plays or fan art. You can also find the social media links on many of the team members on Mycorrhiza's itch.io page. If you have any questions regarding Mycorrhiza, please you can contact me, the game designer, for example on Twitter or my website. Once again, thank you so much for sticking with us on this journey and have fun discovering the extras. Brilliant. Thanks, Tim. Thanks so much. Right. So, I mean, I don't want to go an extra because that's basically going to be the tutorial section, isn't it? The beginning and the ending again. Let's go back to the third door. And let's see what we can do here. That hopefully would be better than what we did last time. So, we're going to skip through all of this. I couldn't remember it anymore, but it must have been horrifying. Chills were still running down my spine. It was just a dream, just a nightmare, nothing more. After calming down, I decided to take another look around the house. I think that's going to be... Okay, right, here we go. Let's enter... I need the food to get the medicine. Oh no, we don't need the food to get the medicine. Let's go into room 1 first. My heart stopped for a second and panic slowly My heart stopped for a second and panic slowly started to set in. Was I really trapped in here? I hastily walked to the door and stepped right through. The man had stared at me with wide eyes. This means that you, instead of the girl, might be able to help us. Yeah, let's see what you're saying now. Nope, not quite. There might be people behind the other doors that we could possibly help. Please let me know if you have anything that you don't need or if you're in need of something. That way I can make sure that everyone gets out of here safely. Some people nodded in agreement, with the majority stayed stoic. Okay, so we've now got the medicine. Right, so we got medicine now. So now let's go to room 3. Can we skip this? Yes, until now. I had some medicine on me. Or at least that's what the woman who gave me it called it. I really couldn't read the label. Should I give it to Lanny? Yes. It seemed like he would die if nothing was done. I decided to take the risk and administered the medicine to him. I have some medicine with me. He should be alright in no time if he takes this. I had sounded more confident than I actually was in the hopes of cheering Amy up. I made sure he was conscious enough to drink it. Then I carefully lifted his head and put the bottle to his mouth. He slowly gulped it down and set his head back down. Will he be okay now? I think so, but it'll take time for the medicine to take effect. All that was left to do was to hope that what I gave him would help against his fever. You seem to have some food and water here. Do you think I could take some of it with me? More people are trapped in here and they don't seem to have any. I don't mind. Okay, so this should be the same now. And this time, I'm going to take all of it. Because there was 2 sets of people in 2 of the other doors and they all both seem to want food. So I'm going to take all of it, especially because Amy doesn't mind. Rightly or wrongly, we're going to take all of the food. I decided to take all of it with me. They'd be fine for a bit without it, and this would give me some trading leverage. But I couldn't help feeling terrible, even if my decision seemed logical to me. I left the room and found myself back in the hallway. Right, I'm now going to go to room 2. The door creaked open and light spilled into the damp room, and we're going to do exactly the same thing here. Since I had been in the room like this before, I knew that I was able to travel back and forth. Hey, a few of the people looked up as I started speaking. I should be able to walk in and out. There are also survivors in the other rooms. I might be able to get you some things if you need anything specific. Frederick shot up and walked up to me until he was way too close for comfort. We need food. You'll get some for us, right? This should be the same now, shouldn't it? And we're going to trade food. I decided to give some food for Frederick. It's probably a good idea to have a weapon with me. We're going to take the weapon. Going to check room 1. And hope to give them food. This will be different. We've not seen this scene, I don't think. We've not been into room 1 a second time. I entered the room for a second time. Even though I hadn't been away for that long, everything seemed different. Oh god. The faces of the people here had darkened considerably. I spotted the old man that I talked to not long ago and approached him, but he didn't even look up as I greeted him. He just sat there with a blank expression on his face, not even moving an inch. Hey, is everything okay? No response. As I looked around, I noticed that none of the others had moved from their spot, nor had any of them looked up since I'd entered the room. I tried to talk to them, but they wouldn't respond. As if they'd all been suddenly turned into statues, their eyes were devoid of any signs of life. I tried shaking them awake, but they didn't react. Hello? Can anyone here hear me? I cried out in the room in desperation, but my words echoed back emptily. What was going on? What had happened to them? Even though I was a bit surrounded by people, I felt alone. Urgh. I jerked my head around. I scanned the dim room with my eyes, until I finally saw something in one of the corners move ever so slightly. My heart started to race as I stepped closer. I couldn't quite make out what made the sound, but it was probably a human, right? Ugh. It made a gurgling sound and I hesitated for a bit. Horrific images of all kinds of creatures popping into my mind. I shook my head and tried to get them out of my head. After a few more cautious steps, I was finally close enough to see it. It was a girl. No, it wasn't just some girl, it was the same girl that I'd ran into on the deck. Her body was limp, but as opposed to the other people in this room, she seemed more or less conscious. I cautiously picked her up and made my way towards the door. The words of the old man echoed in my ears. He told me that she was able to pass through the door, just like I was. But why hadn't she left the room by herself? Did something happen that once she got caught up in? And how did she get in here? Anyhow, I wouldn't have noticed her in the hallway. I turned towards my room. It had a bed and she probably would be safe there. Opening the door whilst carrying a person was no easy feat, but I finally succeeded and put her on the bed. Home. Her facial expression changed from one of the pain to one of relaxation. She instantly fell asleep. I debated whether I should wake her up and try and get some extra information out of her, but it didn't seem like she was in any condition to answer questions. Seeing her sleep so soundly made me want to take a break as well. I pushed myself to step out of the room and back into the hallway. I still needed to see if there was any way to get out of here. Suddenly I felt the floor beneath me vibrate with increasing intensity. Right, okay, so we've seen this again, I'm assuming. Yeah, it's the same. So this is exactly the same. Okay, right, so... I mean, we're going to attempt room 4, but I don't think it's going to make much difference. Actually, I kind of want to check up on Amy and Lanny, actually. Let's go to room 3. I was worried about those two. All kinds of terrible scenarios had popped into my head. I glanced around the room, and they unfortunately seemed to be more or less okay. I approached them. I had given Lanny some medicine, so he should be doing a little better. How is your brother feeling? Amy did seem to be much calmer than last time. His head doesn't feel as hot anymore. He's been sleeping for a long time, though. For a second I considered the worst, but his pulse was fortunately still there. He did seem to be in a better state, and I was hopeful that he would get up soon with enough rest. How about you, Amy? Are you holding up all right? Yeah, I think so. But I'm kind of hungry. The food we had will soon be gone. I hope that we can get out of here soon, otherwise we might... I dodged her gaze and fixed my eyes at the corner of the room. I should get going again. I should come back and check on you and Lanny again. Okay, hope you don't have to be away for so long again. Long? I hadn't been out for that long. But it was understandable that she didn't want to be left all alone. She was likely exaggerating. I left the room and found myself back in the hallway. We've taken Amy's food, like all of it. So I don't know if that was the right decision now that I'm thinking about it. I feel like if we go to room 4 and shoot the dog, we're going to have the exact same thing happen. I'll just go back to room 3 again. I want to see how they're getting on. I was just about to greet Amy, but then I realised she wasn't kneeling in her usual spot. My heart began to race. I started to assume the worst. I walked towards the middle of the room where her brother was lying. My eyes were still adjusting to the weak lighting. And there she was, lying next to him. They both looked famished, as if they hadn't eaten in at least a week. How could this be? I wasn't gone for that long. Something must have happened whilst I wasn't there. I shouldn't have left them alone. Then all this wouldn't have... I couldn't have stopped whatever did this to them. But it was too late. I approached them and checked both of their pulses. Nothing. I staggered backwards. There's nothing I could do for them anymore. With a heavy heart I stumbled out of the room. Oh no! I've killed them again! God damn it. Right, I don't think there's a lot we can do here. Let's go back to room 2. We haven't been to room 2 for a while. The first thing I did after entering the room was taking a quick glance around to see if Frederick was nearby. To my detriment, he was. He jumped up as he saw me come in. Hey, we had a deal, remember? What are you talking about? You don't tell anyone about the food and I give you the gun. Don't be an ass and break our deal. He planted himself right in front of me, close enough for me to smell his sour sweat again. You gave me an unloaded gun so that our deal was legitimate to begin with. So, I never said about it was going to be loaded. You better get out now. He clenched his right fist. I was sure he would actually punch me if I said another word. Realising that I wouldn't get anything out of here, I stepped back into the hallway. So they're all statues. Frederick's pissed off. The children are dead. This is not a very happy game, is it? There's a dog that I can shoot in the 4th room. None of these rooms are going to end up being nice, are they? Okay, I actually don't know if there's much else I can do here. I feel like we're going to have to go into room 4. Let's go to room 1 again, see if anything different changes. I froze the moment I entered the room. I'd seen some movement out of the corner of my eye. But when I turned my head, all I could see was a blank wall. As I stepped further in, I noticed a scratching sound. It was as if something was clawing at the wall. But I couldn't make out if anything that could have been causing it. There was barely any movement at all. Everyone seemed to be still frozen in place. I stood in the doorframe and strained my eyes. It was getting louder. I considered leaving, but curiosity overcame me. Slowly, I stepped into the room. It was then that I saw someone who seemed to be still awake. Their slight twitching was barely noticeable in the dim light. I considered calling out to them, but something told me not to, and so I cautiously inched towards them. But the closer I got, the more apparent it became that something was off. I froze. Their head. Oh God. Oh man. That's not good, is it? It almost looked as if their face was melting off their bones. Their eyes were dark and hollow. I took a few hasty steps back, but they fortunately didn't seem to react to my presence at all. The scratching seems to have gotten even louder. I noticed something lying on the floor not too far away from the person I just checked on. I hesitated, but my fearful glances were answered with a complete silence and lack of movement. I was still safe. Probably. I shifted towards the thing on the ground and slowly picked it up. It was a sheet of paper that looked like it was ripped from a diary or a log. If I was the leader of this operation, I'd fire anyone who let ethics get in the way. Sacrifices always need to be made to ensure humanity's future. I guess it doesn't really matter. I'll just continue my research in private, since it's not like there's enough subjects inside the zone. I couldn't make heads or tail of this note. I was missing too much context. The scratching got even louder. Something was definitely not right here. I should probably get out of here. I let my eyes wander over the room one last time and made my way back outside. We're going to go back into room 1. Again. I grabbed the door handle, but then I remembered what I experienced last time I was in this room. Was it really a good idea to go back in? Though, technically, my life hadn't been in any danger. Maybe I should check the room again, just in case. I'd just stay in the doorframe. It wasn't like anything besides me could leave this room anyway. Oh my God! The door slowly creaked open and I glanced inside the room. The people that were here were gone. The room was completely empty. In their place was a black substance. Was that blood? Then the scratching started. It seemed to be coming from every direction at once. As I tried to make out its source, I noticed something at the very far end of the room. There were ripples on the wall. It almost looked like the wall was made out of water. Slowly, something started to push itself through the thick, liquid-like texture. First it was a single hand. Then more and more arms started to appear. All of them grasped at empty air. All while the scratching was getting louder and louder. I tried to shield my ears with hands. My instincts told me to run, but I was frozen in place. I couldn't avert my eyes from the scene before me. Slowly, feet started to reach through the wall, and then finally, the whole body was free. The scratching had stopped. I recognized the clothes of some of the creatures in front of me. These were the people who had been trapped in this room, but their heads, they weren't human anymore. Their faces were distorted beyond recognition. As I stared at them in disbelief, I noticed that none of them were moving. They were just staring at me. Then one of them slowly lifted their arm, grasping at the air, and started to slowly walk towards me. It almost looked as if it was pleading. Then the others followed suit. I started to feel a mixture of terror and pity. But as they got closer and closer, my terror grew stronger and stronger. What would they do once they reached me? They definitely weren't human anymore. Were they about to attack me? My head began to spin and I took a few hasty steps back, almost tripping on my way out of the room. There was nothing I could do for them. I was too late. If only I couldn't have found a way out before they turned into that. Frustrated and with a heavy heart, I slammed the door shut. Oh God, okay. Will that room turn out differently? Will room 2 turn out differently? Or should we just go and crack on with door 4? But I feel like door 4 is just going to lead to the ending again. I heard a big ruckus coming from beyond the door as I opened it. This startled me as someone slammed the door back shut. How did I not hear this commotion out in the hallway? People were screaming, punching, kicking and pulling each other's hair. Others were smashing each other's heads against walls. Everyone was doing their best to kill and not be killed. It was a horrible scene. As I stood there, dumbfounded, I quickly realized what this was all about. People were fighting over food. Instead of sharing it, they decided to fight each other for it. Soon I couldn't differentiate dead from alive, as everyone was covered in blood. I watched in horror. Suddenly, a brawling pair came dangerously close to me. I tried to dodge, but my back hit the door frame and I was pushed out of the room as they slammed against me. I didn't think they even saw me, as they were too immersed in their fight. It seems like the food shortage has driven them into insanity. The door slammed shut and I was left alone once again in a quiet hallway. Hesitantly, I debated whether or not to go back into the room and try to break up the fight. God, there's so much, like, stuff in these rooms. Oh, I don't want to go into room 3, but I couldn't bring myself to open the door. Seeing that scene again, I just couldn't. Okay, so we can't not do anything in room 3. Let's try room 1 again. I can't help them anymore. We can't do anything in any of these rooms, can we? Oh, we can. I felt uneasy about entering this room, but I had to find out what had happened to everyone in here. With a foul feeling in my stomach, I stepped over the threshold. What I saw was way worse than anything I could have imagined. The stench was overwhelming. 40 lifeless, blood-covered bodies were lying on the floor. Somehow, they had already started decomposing, even though I hadn't been gone for that long. The smell was enough to make me want to vomit, and I knew that if I'd stayed there any longer, I would. But I had to see if there was any survivors. I slowly made my way to the middle of the room to get a better look at the situation, but then the worst happened. I stepped on something soft and wet. My foot sunk in and my sock was soaked. Oh. Ugh. My body froze. Slowly my eyes wandered to the ground. My foot was stuck in the torso of one of the dead bodies. Oh man. Almost in a panic, I turned around and stumbled out of the door. When I got back into the hallway, I gasped for air and did my best to suppress my gagging and tears. It took me a while to get myself back together. I couldn't explain what I had seen in that room. It almost felt like a nightmare. But I knew I had to move on. So the only room is 4 then, isn't it? I'm just confirming it with 2, but I'm pretty sure the only room we got left is 4. Yeah. They were all dead. Okay. The room seemed to be empty except for a lonely light. So this will be the same as before, right? You know what? As for trying to like maximize things, I'm going to say no to attacking this dog. And I might do that multiple times to see if anything changes. So I'm going to skip that, which we've seen that. I'm going to go into room 4 again. And I'm going to skip all this again. And I'm going to say no. I think it's just going to be on a loop, isn't it? In the end, I still couldn't think of a way to get around it. And so I had no other choice but to simply retreat once again. Okay, so I feel like the only thing we can do... Okay, no, this is different. But one thing was different. Its barking seemed weaker than before. I slowly approached the part of the room where it was chained, but all I saw was a miserable creature. It was weakly lying on the ground, only able to bark and growl at me. I had no idea what had caused it to become like this, considering that I hadn't been gone for that long. This might be my chance, I thought to myself. But as I approached the hole, the dog managed to snatch at me and almost bit me. Apparently it was still capable of hurting me in this state. I had a gun and there were bullets next to the dog. Okay, so it does change. It does change. So I'm going to say no again now. So we're going to say no here. I thought about running past it and forcing my way into the hole in the wall. But I decided against it. There had to be a safer way. Right, okay, so retreating a second here. My understanding of this door, or this, as in the third door, right? The story that we're in, is that time is going quick. It's going at like 3 or 4 times the speed of normal time. So this dog's getting weaker and weaker at the moment. So I'm hoping this dialogue will change. As I entered the room, I instantly felt like something was off. There was no barking. As soon as my eyes got accustomed to the darkness, I saw why. The dog was dead. It was lying on the ground in front of the hole in the wall, motionless. Its tongue was hanging out of its mouth. As I stepped closer to confirm that it truly was dead, I picked up a faint, foul stench. I cautiously poked at it, but it was no reaction. It was definitely dead. Somehow it had died without any apparent reason. I felt bad for it, but now I could finally walk past it without being afraid of getting bitten. Slowly, whilst trying to not step on it, I approached the hole. The hole was rather small, and I had trouble fitting through, but I succeeded eventually. After a while I noticed that something was off. The hole seemed to go on for longer than it should. I expected it to have already come out of another part of the ship, but it just went on and on. And then suddenly a wave of fatigue came over me. It's as if I stepped into a veil, so this is now the end of the story now. Okay. Right. Okay. So we've now explored a lot of door 3, but there's still things we haven't done. So we don't have to kill the dog to get through that area. That's a certain thing. We also don't need to take all of the food, because if we take all of the food, Amy and Lani die anyway, so we need to take half the food. I'm still not sure what to do with that first room. They don't want the food. I was quite surprised by that. My thinking in my head was that I'd give food to the 2 bigger parties, but they don't. The first party, room 1, don't want food. So I don't know what we can really do there. So back into door 3 we go. So I want to get the medicine. Let's get the medicine. Got the medicine. Let's give the medicine to Lani. Yes. Skip the rest of the dialogue. Take half the food. Skip the rest of the dialogue. Go into room 2. Skip the rest of the dialogue. Give them half the food. Get the gun. I'm gonna go to room 2. And then we've got okay, so that's now the ship now, isn't it? Okay, go to room 2. Oh no, we want to go to room 3, don't we? Because they're gonna get hungry. This is awkward. So I think this will be the same, right? Apart from the food. Take none. They can keep the food there. I decided against taking any. I left the room and found myself go back in the hallway. Okay, so they should be fine now with that food. Let's go back to room 2 again now. Oh no! What? Hang on a minute. Or was it room 1 where that girl is? Where May is? Oh, it was room 1. Right, okay, so we've got May out of that room now, but we can't actually get her anywhere. She goes into our room and then stays there. And then horrible shit starts happening in room 1. Horrible shit's already happening in room 2. Hopefully room 3 will be different, because they've got food now. I didn't think that the medicine could have actually worked as quickly, but his fever might have been at least gone down a bit, but to my surprise he was already up and about. This is different. Amy was leaning on a wall whilst Lani was frantically running around and knocking on the walls. They didn't seem to have heard me come in. I don't think there's a secret exit anywhere. I don't think there's a secret exit anywhere. You should probably save your energy until they come in and save us. You know how long it's been already, right? If they wanted to save us, they would have done that forever ago. I bet I could find something. There has to be a way out of here. Unfazed by his sister's advice, he continued to search every inch of the wall. Amy seemed to finally spot me and jog towards me. Scott, did you manage to find a way out? The boy turned around and hastily came closer as well. You're Scott? Amy told me you helped me with the medicine. Thank you a lot. Don't worry about it. And to answer your question, Amy, unfortunately not yet. The hope drained from their expectant eyes, and as I said that, I wish I had brought them some good news. But never mind that. I'm surprised you're better already, Lani. Already? I don't think any sickness has ever kept me down longer than this one. I practically slept throughout the whole week after you gave me the medicine. Huh? A week? Yeah, good thing we had enough food and water. It seemed like they were serious. I was pretty sure that I hadn't been that long since I last seen them. Have you really been trapped in here for a week? Yep. That didn't make any sense. But I was feeling so glad about Lani being alright again that I decided to postpone my questions about this. Getting them out as quickly as possible had to be top priority. So, what about your parents? Were they with you when this whole thing happened? No, they were somewhere else on the ship, but not in the same room as us. I see. Can you tell me what they look like? I can let them know you're safe if I meet them. They proceeded to give me a detailed description of their parents, and I did my best to memorize everything. So we came here as a group of 6. You, your parents, Sabrina and Frederick, right? Oh god, the plot thickens. The plot we haven't seen Sabrina once. But we have seen Frederick, and he's probably dead right now. Being murdered in a murdering orgy of 40 people. Sorry, I can't think of a better way to put it. Shit. Okay. Yeah, and that dog came too. Oh my god, this plot. You can probably recognize our dad pretty quickly. He's a bit odd since he always carries bullets with him as a lucky charm, but no actual gun. He always says, I don't think he needs to know. Lanny gave her an irritated look. Oh, I almost forgot. Did you meet a girl while looking around? She wears a hoodie and a skirt. That description sounded oddly familiar. Oh my god, these guys know May as well. Could they mean the girl I'd met on the ship deck? Yeah, I think I have. She wasn't doing too well when I found her, but she's resting in my room now. She was here shortly before you came. She was really nice and told us that she'd find a way to help Lanny, but she never came back. I'm worried about her. She didn't sound that nice when the man in the first room had described her. Maybe she just had a weakness for children. I want to go home with Mom and Dad. Her words were almost inaudible, but both Lanny and me picked it up. Don't worry, we'll get out of here soon. I felt really bad for them, but I wasn't sure of what I could do to help. Staying here and lending them my company would be a way. But then I couldn't search for another way to get them out. Maybe I could look for their family first and make sure they know that their children were safe. But I was afraid of how many days will have passed the next time I'd entered this room. The flow of time seemed to be peculiar in this place. I came to the conclusion that I'd keep on searching for a way out if I wanted to help them. I should probably go now. I'll let your parents know that you two are alright if I meet them. You two sit tight and stick together until I come back, alright? I'll have found a way to get you out by then, don't worry. Oh, and let us know if you find our dog. He's a Doberman with a red collar. Okay, I'll let you know if I see it. With that, I turned around and stepped outside. Okay, so, their dad's dead. Their dog isn't. So, the other thing I'm starting to notice with this area is that time does go quickly, but I only feel like time goes quickly if you go into that room. Time seems to be the same in every room that you're not in, but then when you go into a room, time speeds up. So, I feel like the dogs should... The dad's dead, but the dog's still alive, I'm thinking. We'll find out now, but that's my logic. The room seemed to be empty except for a lonely light bulb hanging from the ceiling. It didn't seem to be working properly as it barely gave off any light and flickered every now and then. It took my eyes a while to get adjusted to the darkness. This is the same, so let's go and skip this. Attack the dog using a gun. No. Okay. Now let's go back into room 3. I thought about checking up on them again, but I was about to open the door. I realised, what good would that do? I still haven't found an exit. I should use my time more efficiently. Oh, so we can't even enter that room until we deal with the dog. But, oh no! Oh no! So we have to kill the dog no matter what? Either the dog dies out of time and starvation and whatever, or we gotta shoot it. That's horrible. Unless, again, we restart the story and have the dad be alive. But the dad's super dead. So, let's try this. The nicest way to kill the dog is by letting it starve, right? Not shoot it, because if we shoot the dog and the kids see the dog's been shot, they might think it's me, because it was. So, I don't feel like that's the answer here. So, I feel like we're just going to have to let it starve, because I don't want to be the reason why the dog's dead, right? Can we now go into room 3? No. Okay, so let's try doing room 4 again. Oh, it's the same. That's the end of the story. So the dog dies and we escape without the children? That doesn't make any sense, but okay. That's fine. Which we haven't done everything anyway, because the dad's not alive, so Frederick's not alive. Right, okay, let's try do this. Okay, we're starting to get better at door 3, but we're still ways away in terms of getting the best outcome here. So, right. Okay, let's try this door. Again, my thinking is, room 1, get the medicine. I mean, in theory, we could still... No, we won't. We will go into room 3. Give the kids the medicine. Yes. Get the medicine. Take half the food. Okay. We want to get half the food now to those in room 2. And to get Frederick the food. Yes. We've got his gun, which is empty. Shall we now go back to room... Let's go to room 1 and get May out of the room. May's now out of the room. I don't know what if there's like a pre and a post thing here with the ship crashing. Like if there's stuff that you got to do before the ship crashes. I don't know how much of a difference that makes, the pre and post ship crashing. But we'll keep on. We'll keep on. Let's go to the kids now. So we're not going to take any of the food. Let's go back in there now. See if this changes now that we've met. That the dad should be okay. That doesn't change. Any of that doesn't change. I'm assuming that we cannot now go into room 3, right? Yes. What good would that do? We haven't found an exit. But let's go for it. Let's go for it. Quick glance around to see if Frederick was nearby. To my detriment, he was. He jumped up as he saw me come in. Hey, we had a deal, remember? So we've read all this already. We can't do anything with room 3. I've got a feeling if I go into room 2 here, it's just going to be a mass brawl again, isn't it? Yep. I don't think... What can we do? Does anything different happen in this room? Nope. They're the same. So can't help them anymore. That's going to be the same now. Yep. And this is going to be the same now, isn't it? Okay, you know what? We will do this differently. We will shoot the dog. We will. I don't want to do it, but we're going to do it because we tried this bit without shooting the dog last time. It made no difference. Maybe if we shoot the dog... Oh, we leave anyway. Oh, man. I really don't know what else we can do here. I don't know how to get the key from that area. There's no hint of a key. At least with door 2, there was a hint where the key was, but I didn't know how to get it. This, I have no idea where the key is. No, I think it's a huge lab experiment. That's my theory. We're just going to take the food. We're going to be awful, horrible bastards in this playthrough, just so you know. We're going to take all your food. We're going to give it to your dad. This is awful. So we're going to take the food from the kids, give it to the dad, take his gun and kill their dog. Fucking hell, that's dark. Shoot the dog. It's exactly the same. That's fine. I just wanted to try it. Right, okay, let's go to extras then. If we haven't done this yet. I shot awake, panting heavily, my clothes sticking to my skin due to all the sweat. My eyes darted around the room, but everything was quiet. I seemed to be safe. A nightmare. Seems like I just had a nightmare. I couldn't remember it anymore, but it must have been horrifying. Chills were still running down my spine. It was just a dream, just a nightmare, nothing more. After calming down, I decided to take another look around the house. The fact that no one was here, even though the lights were on, was still nagging at the back of my mind. But I was more confident that I'd be able to find help now that it was daytime. I left the bedroom to retry the doors, just in case. But when I passed by the front door, I noticed a sheet of paper that was taped to it. The handwriting was very crude, but I was able to make out what it said. No escape. Oh, this is different. Had someone been in here whilst I was asleep? And what did they mean with no escape? I tugged on the door. It didn't budge. I tugged again and again and again, each time with increasing force. It didn't move an inch. Was I actually trapped in here? I quickly moved to the nearest window and tried to open it, but I couldn't. Just like the door, this window too didn't budge. It was as if it was painted on the wall. The same was true for the other windows. In my desperation, I picked up a chair and threw it against the glass. At the glass. But nothing happened. It didn't even cause a visible scratch. This is madness. Had someone locked me in on purpose? How could I escape? I quickly went from door to door and tried to open them, and to my surprise, one opened. Did I not check every door properly yesterday? Or did the person who was here before I woke open it? This room looked like a study, a very small and empty study. The only notable objects were a desk and a computer. The desk had 4 drawers. Peeking at someone's private possessions didn't sit well with me. But this wasn't the time to think about that. I needed to find a way to escape. I tugged on one of the drawers. Closed. There were keyholes on the front of the drawers. I took another look below the desk and behind the computer, but there was nothing of note. This also meant that there was no phone here I could use to call for help. But if this computer was connected to the internet, then maybe I would be able to contact a colleague or a friend. When I put my hand in my pockets out of habit, I felt something metallic brush my hand. My pockets had been empty the day before. I pulled out what was inside and realized I was holding a small key that I didn't recognize. My puzzled look wandered towards the drawers. What shall I examine? So, we have got the key from door number 1. We haven't got the keys from door 2 or 3. I would suspect that key 1, in theory, should open drawer 1. I'm going to attempt to open drawer 1 and see what happens here. I slid the key in and it fit. It actually somehow had this drawer's key. Inside the drawer was an unassuming USB drive. I put it into one of the computer's USB slots. What should I examine? Well, we're going to go for the computer. I switched the computer on and was greeted to a simplistic interface. Welcome, Maria. Windows, love it. Replay intro, replay outro. So we've seen the intro, we've seen the outro, and we've got some files here. Okay, so there's no point in looking at those, is there? But we've got these here, so we've got a text file. Hints to find the keys part 1. Here we go. Every door has 1 key. The first door is the easiest, the third door is the hardest. For the third door, the order is important. View the next page if you're still having difficulties finding them. Hints to find the keys part 2. Obtain the journal. Find a book at the last moment. Learn about their mother and give her the food. Right, okay, so this is hints about finding key 1, 2, and 3. We have found a journal, so that's fantastic. Find a book at the last moment. I think I know what that's about. That should be quite easy to find now that I know emphasis on last moment here, because there's 3 opportunities to get in this book. So if I get it on the last attempt, that should get me the key, right? Learn about their mother and give her the food. Right. That's interesting, because we haven't seen their mother at all. Let's go to door 2 and get the second key before we do door 3. Okay, so we've got another folder here. Oh, there's 2. Oh, another picture. Log 1. Our department was tasked with finding a cure for the recent outbreak, and I was appointed co-team lead to help with our insane workload. Since my partner will cover the logistical side of things, I can focus on research, experimentation, and choosing what to share with other departments. First, I'd like to summarize the subject. A new type of disease was discovered at excavation site 1208ZOZ2. It was simply called, or ZOZ for short. Cause unknown. Team D is currently stationed on site for security and sample collection. The rest of us work in labs. ZOZ has no symptoms at first, but eventually causes lightheadedness, which is strange since it keeps blood flowing to the head. Suddenly, victims fall into a coma. The bodies decay. The neck region hardens, presumably to prevent blood loss, and their brain mostly stays intact. Due to the disease's mysterious nature and transmissibility, we are forbidden to leave the quarantine zone. Those of us working on the cure here are especially at high risk. The chance of contamination is high. Thanks to Team D, we now know that spore-like microorganisms are likely the most cause of ZOZ. This confirms a prior theory about aerial transmission. Furthermore, we discovered that the heads from the excavation site are emitting more of them. I don't know how many of us are infected, but recent victims of ZOZ should start exhibiting its few symptoms any day now. Further testing is needed to learn about how these microorganisms affect our bodies in such gruesome ways. If we can do that, we can find ways to fight back against ZOZ. Ugh, this entire situation is giving me a headache. With all the information that gathered by Team D, we are able to draft a rough plan for the cure's development. I'm hopeful that we can make it quickly before ZOZ spreads beyond the local populace. Each team has set up sleeping quarters in and around the labs, so that everyone can spend as much time as possible working on this. Some of us have gotten as little as 1 hour sleep these past few nights. Hopefully our sacrifices will be worth it. One variant of the cure is making steady progress, otherwise things have been generally slow. I fear the longer this takes, the more our morale will fall, especially as people within this quarantine zone fall victim to ZOZ. A colleague of mine broke down when he heard that ZOZ had travelled further than he expected. His family lived in one of those nearly affected quarantine zones. Team C has also had problems with one of their scientists, who got themselves banned from the research centre. Apparently, she performed non-consensual experiments on people infected with ZOZ. Due to the dire situation we're in, some might want to try extreme methods, but I agree that she went too far. Hopefully nothing similar happens here. For now, I think I need to lay down. One of our facility's branches created a reliable means of telling whether someone has ZOZ before they fall into a coma. I've been given a prototype of the test. I was curious enough to try it on myself. Unfortunately, it came back positive. I should have known, since I've been handling the spores daily. Not even following every possible precaution helped. How am I supposed to finish my research now? I'll just have to do this as quickly as possible. No one can know. This can't all be for nothing. The cure my team has been working on is almost complete. If I can, I'm going to try it on myself first, since it should wipe out any ZOZ spores within any infected person. It's my only hope. At least this way, if something happens, no one else has to suffer from our short-sightedness. I know I don't have much time left, so I've been working on it non-stop. I don't want to try it on someone else without knowing, with 100% certainty, that it works. If it does, it shouldn't affect an infected people. We'll distribute it to everyone if so. It's better to be safe than sorry. I don't want to think about what will happen to me if it's ineffective. Writing these logs is getting harder. Darkness sometimes creeps in on the edges of my vision. It's difficult to stand, and I feel like I'm moving through water. If this ends up being my last entry, then goodbye, everyone, and good luck. Oh, man. Here's the second file. I recently encountered an interesting species of plant, one I had not seen before. It had a rather large stem, which was dotted with countless tiny mushrooms. Botany isn't my specialty, so I took it to an old colleague of mine who knows the field. He couldn't make sense of it either. One thing I quickly observed is that animals, mainly mammals like cats and dogs, seem to be highly attracted to the plant. Most eat them, some even refuse to eat anything but. My botanist colleague and I decided to look into these plants and the animals who eat them, at least until we solve this mystery. Eventually, I was able to observe a drastic change in animals that ate the plant. Their bodies deformed over time as they fed, and they became incredibly aggressive. Looking at them, they almost seemed to develop human or human-like features. I feared I might be attacked at some point, so I locked all of my test subjects in cages. They only ate the damn plants. I had to keep feeding them an all-plant diet, and it still disturbs me. They all started to look even more human. They also became far, far more dangerous. An ex-dog sniffed at my cloth against my botanist colleague left behind and became highly agitated. It broke out of its cage and raced towards who knows where. I chased after it, of course, but it was already long gone. Needless to say, I reinforced the cages the other animals are being held in. Today is the day after that incident. I just received word that my colleague was found dead in his home, with a big blood puddle underneath him. A DNA test revealed that it wasn't his. This person who found him swore that a weird monster was lying right where the puddle was, but slowly dissolved. Obviously, no one believed her. My working hypothesis this time is simple. These monsters can be used to seek out and kill someone, but they die immediately afterwards. While I mourn the loss of my colleague and friend, I need to continue our research. I have a feeling that other people have found out what the plants can be used for. They must be developing their own pets in secret. It won't go so smoothly. I'll have to keep growing my own and hope that I'm faster, better than they are. I should be okay as long as I avoid leaving anything of mine at someone's town. They can't only do something if they have my scent after all. It's just too bad those things die after one use. We got a picture. Ah, these are pictures from the first chapter, isn't it? Okay. So it feels like this file is about door number 1. This is about hints to get the other keys. Okay. Let's turn off the computer. And go back to bed. There's nothing here that could help me at the moment. Maybe I should lie down and take a nap. Someone would find me eventually. Right? There's no way I would be stuck here forever. right? Okay. Right, my friendos, we're going to go into door number 2. And we're going to get that book at the last second. So I was at some hotel, people were trapped, and I couldn't remember, but it must have been terrifying. And the rest of us should say the same, right? Oh no. I took deep breaths and kept mumbling to myself that I'd been all a dream, nothing more. After calming down, I decided to take another look around the house. Now it's the second. And we are going to take a look around, and we will check the pictures. Why not? We'll take the pictures, and we're going to check the other rooms. Now, the last second, in theory, is now. And we need to check this desk. And if we check the book now, this might be hopefully different. I moved the small bottles aside and picked up the book underneath. The book cover depicted the mask with a distorted facial expression. The title read, The Art of Humor. I flipped through it. It was apparently a guide by the most hilarious one that explained how to make funny faces. But the pictures in the book were more disturbing than humorous. One description of a technique caught my eye. Finally, we arrive at addition. Like removal, this is a very risky technique, reserved only for the cream of the crop. It may sound simple, though. All you have to do is add and never stop. Search for features that are disgrace to facial humor, then take them for yourself and pair them off. A person might even thank you for all your help with removal. I glanced at the pictures beside the text and shook my head in disgust. I started skimming through it quickly, and sure enough it was full of similar depictions. On the very last page I came to a sudden stop. There was a key taped to it. Did the key come with the book, or did the owner of the book hide it in here? Oh well, it didn't matter to me anyway, since I didn't know what door the key was for. I suddenly heard a sound outside my apartment. There's no time to place the book back into the bottles. I stuffed it into my pocket. I hastily slipped inside a closet and carefully pulled it shut. I wasn't sure why I was hiding, but I had an awful feeling in my guts. I think this is going to stay the same now? Yes. Oh, this is different. Oh no. I could feel the weight of the book in my pocket. I was sure I put it in here. She rummaged the desk. This is different. Wait, what? What? Where is it? I know it is here. It was here. She cast the bottles from the desk to the ground. They shattered, spilling their sickly sweet-smelling contents across the carpet. The panic drained from her face. It's okay. It's okay. I just need to buy a new one. It's completely fine. I'll just ask the most hilarious one if he has one left over. He has to. She scurried out of the apartment, leaving the door wide open. I remained frozen in the closet for a few minutes. My heart slowly calmed itself. Once I was sure that she was really gone, I stepped out. I needed to get myself as far away from this building and this town as fast as I possibly could. And then, yeah, we get caught out, but we should hopefully have the key now. Got the key, guys. We got the key. We got the key. Cool. 2 keys down, 1 to go. Right, okay, let's now check out that other key. Drawer number 2. I slid the key in and it fit. I actually somehow had this drawer's key. Inside the drawer was an unassuming USB drive. I put it into one of the computer's USB slots. Computer. I switched the computer on and was greeted to a simplistic interface. Welcome, Maria. Windows 3.0. So this stays the same, right? So this is now giving us access to this. Entry number 1. The news talked about a new epidemic that's broken out, but refused to give any info other than the disease sends you into a coma-like state. They just told us to stay in our homes. There's talk of a contamination zone or a quarantine too. One of the neighbours said they'll stop people from leaving the area, even by force if necessary. My sister, who was assigned to the team researching the sickness, also told me she'll be away from home until the situation is resolved. I feel so alone and hopeless. That's been going on for way longer than I expected. My sister still hasn't come home since she left. I know she has to work day and night to help everyone, but I just can't help missing her. We've been through so much since we left home. I heard that some of my neighbours have the disease too. I really hope they find a cure. Also, I started having weird dreams lately. I always find myself in a town that I haven't seen before. My neighbours are all there, but perfectly healthy. That's normal on its own, but the exact same town every time. It's like I really am walking the streets and seeing the sights there. Things are always lucid and to an extent. Time just progresses in strange ways, like hours pass by in a matter of minutes, and I don't even notice. I must be having these dreams because of all the stress. My sister suddenly came home. I was really happy at first, but she seemed different. When I asked her what was bothering her, she said she got fired and wouldn't tell me why. I just let it go. I told her about my weird dreams too, but she barely listened. Maybe I can do something to cheer her up. My sister left yesterday night, but I didn't tell her where she was going. She came back with this weird device, which she said is telling whether someone has ZOZ. ZOZ is apparently the name that they gave the sickness. I let her use it on me. Apparently I got infected somehow, but I figured that was probably the case. Most of our neighbours are in comas, and I saw some of the other ones who aren't just yesterday. I guess it couldn't be helped. She asked if I'd let her inspect me. I was hesitant, but she talked me into it. My sister told me something weird today. Apparently I should already be in a coma, but I don't feel any different than usual. This led to her think that maybe somehow my body can fight the disease. She told me to stay put and not tell anyone until she was absolutely sure. When I asked why I couldn't go to the research facility and let them have a look, she got really defensive. She said they might hurt me. I'll let her test her fears for 2 more days. After that, I'll see if someone else can find anything. I don't know what was happening to my what had happened to my sister. We've always been close. She's my best friend, but she's just not the same person anymore. I tried to leave today because her 2 days are up, but she protested. Things got physical and she overpowered me. She locked me in my room and screamed about how it's for your own good and they'll kill you. I wish I was strong enough to break free. When she calmed down, she told me that there's something in our bodies preventing the sickness from developing. She even said that she infected herself to test that theory. That made me cry, because at first because I thought she was insane, and then because I was glad she was okay. I had another weird dream today. I was in that town again, but I met my sister there. We talked, and she said she'd been having the same dream ever since she got infected herself. As soon as we were up, she stormed into my room and started asking questions. She said it might be because of ZOZ, but that doesn't make any sense. I just want this to end soon so things can go back to normal. Since yesterday, I've been hearing weird noises outside my room every now and then. My sister keeps saying that everything's fine and that I'm just imagining things, but I'm scared. Sometimes it's just random shuffling, but sometimes it sounds like muffled screams. What are you doing out there, Mary? Ooh. There are generally 3 methods to reach the pinnacle of face comedy: distortion, removal, and addition. We'll start with the easiest one, distortion. Distortion is a simple but not very well refined technique, so I wouldn't recommend trying it for too long. Still, good fundamentals provide a basis for improvement, meaning you, my dear reader, should keep paying attention. The easiest way to distort one's facial features is with the fingers. For example, you could pull your eyelids or tug the corners of your mouth, giving you a strange appearance. Any amateur can do that though. Using tools is far more complex, not to mention more permanent. Everyone will love it, especially if you shift the tools places around. Personally, I'd recommend using staples or tape to make distortions more long-term. Other interesting tools are strings and pins. Put a pin through your eyelid or cheek to fix something in place, then the rest of the page is covered in red stains. Oh dear. Now, let's discuss removal. This is an intricate, highly involved process. You can completely excise parts of your face to look funnier and maybe even charm your crush. To do this, you will need scissors, a big sharp knife, a handsaw or a bone saw, or a rotary saw. Caution, messy. It's usually best to have an assistant too. Removal is a difficult process by oneself, and maybe your buddy needs help as well. Just remember that laughter is the best medicine. The laughs you receive from this, the essence of true facial comedy, will make the pain more than bearable. First, make a small incision on the left side of your nose, and the rest of the description is drenched in blood. Finally, we arrive at addition. Mic removal. This is a very risky technique, reserved only for the cream of the crop. So this is the entry in the book that it was in Sabrina's, I think it's Sabrina's, isn't it? Sabrina's possession in the desk. This is a very risky technique, reserved only for the cream of the crop. It may sound simple though. All you have to do is add and never stop. Search for features that are a disgrace to facial humor and then take them for yourself and pair them off. The person might even thank you for all your help with removal. There are some important things to keep in mind though. First and foremost, never steal from a fellow comedian. Second, don't damage anyone's face whilst on the hunt for parts because you might ruin your additions. Third, be sure to keep unused parts frozen so they can be used later. You may want to start with just one person, but variety is the spice of life. You can add all sorts of facial features to yourself. and looked like either a real freak show or a Daythic model. Beauty is only skinned. The remaining of the pages are covered in blood and assorted flesh chunks, leaving them completely unreadable. Nice. And a picture. Oops. Lots of pictures in this one, isn't there? Excellent. Excellent. Right, we're going to have to go back into door 3, aren't we? So we need to discover... The hint was to find out more about the mum and give her the food. But I think the only scenario I've not done is refuse the food. So maybe I'm going to try that. I'm going to refuse this food now. So they're going to be like, I haven't got anything with me right now, so I can get the hell out of here. Show me out the room. I tripped and fell. I slammed the door and shit in my face. That guy was a huge jackass. I still felt bad for the other people in the room. I have to go back in there eventually if I wanted to help them. Okay. I'm going to try again. You bring anything useful with you? He didn't offer so much as a greeting. I don't have anything with me, sorry. Still, how incompetent can you be? Don't come back until you found something. He shouted at me again and shoved me out the room. Did he actually think I'd want to give him any food after all of this? But there were other innocent people in the room who were in need of help, and I really wanted to help them. I'm going to keep on trying room 2. I expected Frederick to jump towards me and demand to know whether or not I had any food with me, but to my surprise, he didn't. He was nowhere to be seen. Instead, another man, as if awoken from a trance, jumped up and stormed towards me. I tried to step out of the way, but he almost tackled me and grabbed me by the collar. You have food and water. You have food and water. Give them to us. I struggled to get him off me, but he kept clinging to me. His strength was surprising, considering how frail he looked. Let me go. I don't have any. Liar. You still look healthy. I bet you're just keeping it all to yourself. As I struggled with him, a pungent metallic stench hit my nose. I finally managed to throw him off me. His body hit the ground. He lay there for a bit, gasping in frustration. He then crawled back to where he had been sitting before attacking me. Whilst catching my breath, I took a look around the room. Everyone was sitting in their own corner, eyes fixed on the ground. They looked more famished than the last time I had seen them, and the whereabouts of Frederick was also still a mystery to me. I approached a woman. There we go. This is a woman. I wonder if this is the mum. I approached a woman sitting on one of the far back corners of the room, but she averted her gaze as I asked her if she had seen where he had gone. He's not here anymore. That was all she was willing to tell me. I had no idea what had happened here, and I didn't seem like I'd find out by asking them. Another wave of the pungent smell hit my nose, and I took a few steps back. What was that? It almost made me gag. Not wanting to spend any more time here than necessary, I left the room. Okay, so that was different. So I've refused to give food to Frederick. He's now gone, and there's a woman in there now. So now my thinking is maybe now do we get the medicine to the kids and get the food? Let's do that. Medicine. Kids. Give them the medicine. Take half of the food. Now go into room 2. Felt really uneasy about entering this room. Was it because I was out of the way everyone had acted the last time I was here? Or was it because of the smell? With a foul feeling in my stomach, I stepped over the threshold. An even worse stench than the last time hit my face, stealing my breath and making my eyes tear up. It was enough to make me want to vomit, and I knew if I stayed here any longer I would. Oh Christ. Oh my god, this is a different scene. We've not seen this picture before. That's something, isn't it? I took a look around the room through my teary eyes. There were piles of something. While quickly covering my nose, I wiped out my watering eyes and took a closer look. There were big mountains of clothes scattered throughout the room. Some kinds of insects were buzzing around them. But there was also another big red pile. At first I thought it was flesh, but as I got closer I realised it was mostly organs. I quickly stepped back towards a wall, but as I did, I almost stumbled over something. I let out a shout as I tried to regain my balance. I glanced at the floor to see what I stepped on. It was a woman who was leaning on the wall, but her appearance was off. Her stomach was horribly bloated, as if it was about to burst at any moment. Right next to her was a knife that was covered in blood. It didn't seem like she was killed with it, as I didn't see any stab wounds on her. Instead, she was covered in many small bruises. Either way, she was undeniably dead, even if I couldn't quite make out why. This whole room was bizarre. Piles of clothes, piles of organs, and a woman with a bloated stomach. What had happened here? I quickly came to the conclusion that there was no use thinking about it, and if I wanted to get out of here as soon as possible, the stench was killing me. I gasped for air as I finally stepped out the room. Trying to force a horrible image of what I'd seen out of my mind, I decided not to enter the room again. I turned towards the other doors and, with a heavy heart, contemplated what to do next. Wow, okay, that was different. Ah, so we can't go into that room again now. Right, okay, well, we haven't got the gun. I had no use for the bullet yet, but if I did in the future, I'd know where to find one. When I took another close look to the area behind the dog, I saw there was an opening in the wall. It's the same now. Okay. This is going to be the same. This is going to be the same. And this is going to lead to the exit, right? Yeah. Okay. Okay. About your parents. Here we go. Right. Parents. What about your parents? Were they with you when this whole thing happened? No. They were somewhere on the ship, but not in the same room as us. I see. Can you tell me what they looked like? I can let them know that you're safe if I meet them. They proceeded to give me a detailed description of their parents, and I did my best to memorize everything. Maybe she's in room 2 then. Oh, here we go. I also noticed a woman earlier that looked similar to how the siblings had described their mother. Should I give the food to her? Yes. Sorry, I don't have anything. I quickly walked past Frederick and approached the woman. Frederick sat back down, frustrated, clenching his fists angrily. Hey, are you by any chance the mother of Amy and Lanny? Her eyes shot open. Have you seen them? Are they okay? Yes, they're alright. They are in another room and I have enough food and water to survive for quite a while. Oh, thank God. She looked very relieved, but I knew that she wouldn't be able to fully stop worrying about them until they were back together. I quickly glanced around the room to make sure that Frederick wasn't looking our way. I then got the cans of food out and held them out to her. Here, this should get you by for some time. She looked a bit confused, but still happy to took the cans and hid them under her mantle. Are you sure that you wouldn't rather trade food for his gun? She pointed at Frederick, but I shook my head. No, I'd rather let you have the food. I'm not sure if I can trust him to share it properly. Alright, but take this with you. She pulled out something shiny from under her mantle and handed it to me. It was a knife. It's probably not quite as useful as a gun, but it's better than nothing. It might help you. I hesitantly took it and put it away. Thank you. I'll make sure to let you and everyone else know once I've found a way out. With that, I bid my farewells and walked towards the exit. But before I could step out the door, I was rudely confronted by Frederick. Hey, what did you two talk about? Nothing. I really didn't feel like dealing with him, so I turned around and kept walking towards the door. He forcefully grabbed my arm, preventing me from leaving. Don't try anything funny, alright? I pulled my arm free and quickly made my way out before he could grab me again. I really didn't want to have to deal with him again. The door fell shut behind me and I let my eyes wander over the other doors. Okay. Let's go and see the dog. Let's see if there's anything different happens here. I could attack it with the knife that I got from the sibling's mother. It's different. Let's stab the dog. It's so mean. I slowly approached the creature. The knife felt heavy in my hand. I strengthened my resolve, and then lunged towards the dog. I closed my eyes at the last moment. I felt a sharp sting in my hand and jumped back. The dog had managed to lightly injure me. Now that it had tasted blood, it seemed to tug on the chain even more furiously. Since I had pulled back my hand quickly enough, I only sustained a small scratch. The dog, on the other hand, seemed to have dodged my strike effortlessly. For fear of losing one of my fingers, I discarded the knife idea for now. I couldn't think of any way around getting the dog without getting mauled, so I decided to retreat for now and look for a way to get past it without getting myself in danger. Okay. I mean, can we not say hello to the... Okay. The only thing we can do now is this one again. We're gonna keep on attacking it with its knife. Let's go for it. I mean, why not? It's something different. I turned the knife in my hand, but quickly remembered how my last attempt went and decided against it after all. In the end, I still couldn't think of any way to get around it, so I had no other choice but to simply retreat once again. Okay. I mean... But now it was weak and almost unable to move. The knife might actually be a valid option this time. The monster looked up as I got closer, glaring at the knife in my hands with hate-filled eyes. I was afraid, but I knew that I had to do this to get past it. As I got closer, it started to writhe. It was almost as if it was trying to escape me. Once I stood right next to it, I once again tried to snap at me. I debated whether or not I should try to get past it without killing it, but the risk was too big. If I was to be bitten here, the wound could easily get infected. The dog could also carry disease like rabies. I cautiously approached it and readied my weapon. At the last moment, I instinctively closed my eyes. As I felt the knife touch its body, I quickly jumped back. The knife almost tumbled out of my grip. When I opened my eyes, I could see that my aim had been off. I only managed to scratch its back. I still felt terrible. It became even more furious as I intensified its attempts to bite me. This time I had to deliver a final strike. I wanted to get this over with as quickly as possible. I didn't want it to suffer anymore. I took aim at its neck. The red collar it was wearing stared back at me. I readied myself and, again, I had instinctively closed my eyes at the last moment. When I opened my eyes, I saw the creature stare back at me. It had stopped barking. I looked where I had aimed with my knife. There was no blood. I had missed. Or to be exact, I had hit the wrong target. Instead of the dog, I had cut its collar. It was free. I quickly brought my hands up to my face as the dog lunged at me. My feet entangled and I fell backwards. Air was forced out of my lungs as my back hit the ground and the dog stepped on my stomach. If I hadn't been such a coward and hadn't closed my eyes, I wouldn't now be getting mauled by a dog. I readied myself for the oncoming attack, but nothing happened. I slowly opened my eyes. The dog had already stepped off my body and was running towards the door to the hallway. Why hadn't it attacked me? Did it think I'd freed it on purpose? Either way, I was happy that I was still unharmed. As I looked at the ground where the dog had previously been, I noticed something it had left behind. It was the dog's collar. Something had been attached to his inner side. A key. I had no idea what this key was for, but I decided to take it with me. It might come in handy later. Cautiously, I walked towards the hole in the wall. I glanced back to confirm that the dog wasn't about to come back and attack me after all, but it seemed to be really gone. There was a hole rather small, and I had trouble fitting through, but I succeeded eventually. After a while, I noticed that something was off. The hole seemed to go on for longer than it should. I expected to have already come out on another part of the ship, but it just went on and on. Then suddenly a wave of fatigue came over me, as if I had stepped into a veil. The air had gotten heavier, and my breathing became more ragged. I clutched my chest as I tried to figure out what was going on. A throbbing pain pulsed through my arm. It was as if something had stabbed me. I tried to turn around, but I had already become too weak. My fate gave in, and my vision darkened. I could feel a presence near me. Before I could find out who it was, my consciousness faded. And I think that is the end of room number 3. Okay, let's go and check this extra drawer. Drawer number 3. I slid the key and it fit. I actually somehow had this drawer's key. Inside the drawer was an unassuming USB drive. I put it into one of the computer's USB slots. What should I examine? I switched the computer on and was greeted with a simplistic interface. Sega! Sorry. Okay, so we've now got, so that was the, yeah, that's fine. That's fine, isn't it? Alright. Note 1, they actually fired me. Me! How could they be so short-sighted? We need to use every possible method in combating ZOZ. If I was the leader of this operation, I'd fire anyone who let ethics be in the way. Sacrifices always need to be made to ensure humanity's future. I guess it really doesn't matter. I'll just continue my research in private, since it's not like there's enough subjects inside the zone. Frankly, I can't believe I originally thought I was unlucky to live here with this happen. It was a stroke of luck. First, I need to get my notes back. Those numbskulls won't let me take them when they threw me out, and whined about how they're company property. It's my IP. I did the labour. I know my contract, and I know they don't have a leg to stand on. They just want to claim that they found the cure, but it'll be me. At least security isn't too tight at the moment. Mash steps towards discovering a cure. My sister has ZOZ, and although I don't know when she was infected, she says she feels fine. This means the chance of natural immunity, or at least natural resistance, is greater than 0. I'll have to take these drastic measures and see if the resistance is genetic. Normally I'd exercise caution, but time is running out. No one deserves the honours but me. My hypothesis was proven true. After a few successful tests and self-infliction, it seems my sister and I are both completely immune to the disease, and immediately start developing on a cure. May suggested giving herself up to my colleagues, but I convinced her to stay. They have a bigger team, so I'd have no chance to catch up if they found out about her. She gave me 2 days. I'll have to find a way to keep her here after that. It's not just for our sakes, but everyone's. I've been having odd dreams as of late. I always wake up in the same town and find myself wandering through it for hours on end. Sometimes I see people sitting alongside the roads, all of whom look identical to my test subjects. I even meet some who look like my infected neighbours, but they always insist that they've been living there all their life, and even recount events from their childhood to prove it. Strangely, I met May there too. She was shocked to see me, but the feeling wasn't exactly mutual. She mentioned something about having strange dreams the other night. I suppose this is one of those disease symptoms. Could ZOZ be related to a collective unconscious of some kind? Even if it's only shared amongst a few people, do we really need to get rid of it? So we could have eternal life that in the alternative world? No, I'm too committed to stop now. The things I've done, the things I'll have to do, are too much to allow that. I'm even running out of ZOZ infected. Maybe I need some uninfected subjects. Last night I broke into the lab again to see how their research was going and to collaborate with them. There's only so much I can do at home. Most people were asleep, but some weren't. When I thought I'd be found out, they just walked past me with blank expressions on their faces. Things must be not progressing too smoothly for them, or maybe the numbskulls in charge have forced a crunch. Whatever it is, it can't be good for them. I'm glad to see it. It means I'm ahead of them, and that I can help them by perfecting my cure. As I was about to leave with my borrowed data, I found a scientist just outside the facility. He was unconscious, so I brought him home. I soon found out he was already infected, so at least I didn't have to do that part myself. I just finished designing a new formula for my cure. This lucky guy can be the first to try it. As I was exploring the other side, I realized that I could, very slightly, change the environment, and even the people around me. Does my resistance have something to do with it? Is it some kind of blessing or a great curse? I also noticed something truly peculiar about my last test subject. He met my sister in the dream, but didn't have any fake memories. Like everyone else, he seemed to be lost and was trying to find his way back home. Maybe it's because of the new formula I injected him with. It might not have been enough to cure him, but he seemed to have the same awareness about that place May and I do. But he seemed to have the same awareness about that place May and I do, minus the power to actually wake up. It also seemed as if his presence is impacting the world and people around him, similar to May and me, but more extremely. This was a great stroke of luck on my part. I think I'll try testing how far I can warp that place further, and he'll make an excellent control group. Say, I wonder if this happens to people in the real world when their ZOZ dream self dies. Ah, very interesting. It's very interesting. Buried village uncovered by archaeological expedition. Last month, a team led by renowned archaeologist Herschel Sawyer set about to examine the recent landslide's path and origin. They discovered artifacts this past Monday, and today learned that these belonged to an underground village near Pengambara. How or why it was buried remains unclear, but it's certain that this discovery will shed considerable light on our local history. Dr. Sawyer asked our paper not to disclose the dig site's current location so that he and his team can work without distractions. When questioned about why no one came forward regarding the artifacts, one archaeologist said, "We didn't just know what we were dealing with. It'd be premature." He is hoping more interesting things get unearthed during the current days. In the follow-up of yesterday's front-page story, Herschel Sawyer's archaeology team has discovered several human heads in the ground. The strange part, explained Dr. Sawyer, is that these buried heads' level of deterioration implies that they're much younger than the village. When asked if it might be recent, he said that the possibility was a strong one. The team had sent some of their findings to laboratories and the police for analysis. At the very least, this might explain what happened to these people or how they ended up in such an abandoned underground place, Dr. Sawyer commented. The newly christened Buried Hamlet archaeological team made major progress today. This afternoon, Herschel Sawyer identified the village as more of a hamlet. Its people relied on farming to survive. There are no bigger historical villages near it or Pengambara, so the residents were secluded. However, there might be more buried nearby, Dr. Sawyer explained. Before investigating the surrounding areas, the team will focus on fully uncovering the hamlet and its secrets. Unfortunately, sudden lightheadedness and certain members have slowed their progress. When asked to provide more information on the heads that his team uncovered on Saturday, Dr. Sawyer informed our paper that he's still awaiting results from the police and the laboratories. The Buried Hamlet archaeological team, led by Herschel Sawyer, can connect themselves to another strange occurrence. Disembodied, buried heads they uncovered on Saturday were found to be more recent than expected. A coroner's report noted that blood circulation never stopped for a moment, even though specific parts of the brain had died. What we have here, essentially, are people in perpetual coma, according to her. This borders on witchcraft, the science remarked. We still have no idea how it happened. Our assumption is that the heads have been preserved by an unknown parasite or some other organism. The police, meanwhile, said that the heads don't match any missing persons reports from the last 3 years. We can't publish this. The coroner is claiming that this news might tarnish their reputation and might hurt ours because of how absurd it is. If this is all you have today, then remove their comment or claim it was anonymous. Wow. Oh, we've got the ending picture there as well. Okay, so have we now got access to the 4th drawer? I was about to open the drawer when I realized there was no handle. Checking its sides and then decided didn't uncover any hidden switches or keyholes. There is no way to open it without breaking it down bit by bit, which would take forever without proper tools. But this drawer might contain a way for me to escape. A spare house key, for example. I decided to work on dismantling the drawer while I was investigating the rest of the room. You can't open the 4th drawer in this version of the game. Thank you for your patience. What? No! I'm happy with that in a certain way because hopefully it means that there might be more added to the game later on. Just like to surmise my feelings on the game now that we've pretty much come to an end with it. I think it's brilliant. I think it's really, really good. It's as good as I hoped it would be, and I had high expectations. You know, to be honest with you, so it's matched those high expectations. I've absolutely loved playing this game. I really hope me playing it has got other people to consider buying it. Because it's tremendous, and you know, indie developers are tremendous people who work very much, you know, as hard as any AAA developer, but I believe a lot more soul goes into the product, you know, and this is an absolute love letter to manga and Junji Ito and horror storytelling. Everything that you have seen, the art, the music, the stories, the plot twists, the paths you can take are made with love and, you know, attention to detail and care, and it's excellent. This is absolutely brilliant. I've really, really enjoyed playing this. I hope you guys have enjoyed watching it. I hope you guys will consider buying the game. Honestly, please, if you've enjoyed it, please support these developers. You know, they work so hard and they do a great job. You know, hopefully, with continued support, we will see more stuff from Tim and his team in the future. Hopefully, more Mycorrhiza content. Maybe I'd be up for more content for sure. Yeah, okay, so let's talk about that then, because I haven't really talked about theories much. I've been trying to keep my opinions kind of reserved, because you never know until you kind of explored all paths, right? So what was very interesting is in that last document. That was a very interesting last document. So these heads were basically in comas, so these people aren't dead. So my understanding is there was an experiment. There was an experiment with fungi, with Mycorrhiza, with mushroom-esque fungi plants that affected animals and affected humans, and Scott is one of those researchers, but he's just one of the researchers. He's not one of the head researchers. He's just a dude working in a lab, right? Sabrina and Frederick seem to be very much involved in the experimentation with it, as well as May's sister. And May and May's sister are immune to this disease, and in fact, because they're immune but they can still be affected, they're having dreams. And it seems like Scott, I don't know if he's immune to the disease or if because I believe he was injected with something from May's sister, right? So he's able to be involved in the pathways and these stories that are taking part. So these three doors here, so these are all May's imagination, if I'm not mistaken, or maybe May and May's sister's imagination. And Scott is somehow able to temper into this and experiment their minds and their stories and their visions in his own way. And because it's not him and his characters and his friends and his life, it's a completely unknown story times 3 for him. But in theory, I'd imagine that he's probably in a coma, and then he gets killed off at the extra ending, because they have no other use for him. The ending was very interesting because it looked like it was. I might have been mistaken, but it looked like it was Amy that was killing Scott, and with May in the background. But I might have got that wrong, and that it was May that was killing. Because I mean, May's character is very mysterious. She's the most interesting character in the game. I really like her character. I like the fact we don't know a lot about her, and that she's very, very cleverly written to be there to be supportive and to guide Scott, but then to like whip the rug when she kind of gets him where she wants him to be. It's very, very well written. So Amy is definitely the most mysterious. She's barely in the third story. I thought she was going to be more involved in the third story. I was very surprised by the depth of the third story. I'm a sucker for different pathways and different things you can do. I love the butterfly effect aspect of this game and games similar to it. And there is that aplenty in this door. There are so many ways to do this door. What door do you take in what order, and what happens in each door if you do it in a different way? And it took me so long to figure out how to get the key for that reason. And I thought that was excellent. That was so good. I really, really enjoyed that third door. I think that's enough talking from me. But yeah, excellent.